Book 5, Pro and Contra. Chapter 1. The Engagement. Madame Holikov was again the first to meet Alyosha. She was flustered. Something important had happened. Katerina Ivanovna's hysterics had ended in a fainting fit, and then a terrible, awful weakness had followed. She lay with her eyes turned up and was delirious. Now she was in a fever. They had sent for Herzenstube. They had sent for the aunts. The aunts were already here, but Herzenstube had not yet come. They were all sitting in her room waiting. She was unconscious now, and what if it turned to brain fever? Madame Holikov looked gravely alarmed. "This is serious, serious," she added at every word, as though nothing that had happened to her before had been serious. Alyosha listened with distress and was beginning to describe his adventures, but she interrupted him at the first words. She had not time to listen. She begged him to sit with Lisa and wait for her there. "Lisa," she whispered almost in his ear. "Lisa has greatly surprised me just now, dear Alexey Fyodorovitch. She touched me too, and so my heart forgives her everything. Only fancy, as soon as you had gone, she began to be truly remorseful for having laughed at you today and yesterday, though she was not laughing at you, but only joking. But she was seriously sorry for it, almost ready to cry, so that I was quite surprised. She has never been really sorry for laughing at me, but has only made a joke of it. And you know she is laughing at me every minute. But this time she was in earnest. She thinks a great deal of your opinion, Alexey Fyodorovitch, and don't take offence or be wounded by her if you can help it. I am never hard upon her, for she's such a clever little thing. Would you believe it? She said just now that you are a friend of her childhood, the greatest friend of her childhood. Just think of that. Greatest friend. And what about me? She has very strong feelings and memories, and what's more, she uses these phrases, most unexpected words, which come out all of a sudden when you least expect them. She spoke lately about a pine tree, for instance. There used to be a pine tree standing in our garden in her early childhood. Very likely it's standing there still, so there's no need to speak in the past tense. Pine trees are not like people, Alexey Fyodorovitch. They don't change quickly. "Mamma," she said, "I remember this pine tree as in a dream. Only she said something so original about it that I can't repeat it. Besides, I've forgotten it. Well, goodbye. I am so worried I feel I shall go out of my mind. Ah, Alexey Fyodorovitch, I've been out of my mind twice in my life. Go to Lisa, cheer her up, as you always can so charmingly." "Lisa," she cried, going to her door, "here I've brought you Alexey Fyodorovitch, whom you insulted so. He is not at all angry, I assure you. On the contrary, he is surprised that you could suppose so." "Merci, maman. Come in, Alexey Fyodorovitch." Alyosha went in. Lisa looked rather embarrassed, and at once flushed crimson. She was evidently ashamed of something, and, as people always do in such cases, she began immediately talking of other things, as though they were of absorbing interest to her at the moment. "Mamma has just told me all about the 200 roubles, Alexey Fyodorovitch, and you're taking them to that poor officer. And she told me all the awful story of how he had been insulted. And you know, although Mamma muddles things, she always rushes from one thing to another. I cried when I heard. Well, did you give him the money, and how is that poor man getting on?" "The fact is I didn't give it to him, and it's a long story," answered Alyosha, as though he too could think of nothing but his regret at having failed, yet Lisa saw perfectly well that he too looked away, and that he too was trying to talk of other things. Alyosha sat down to the table and began to tell his story, but at the first words he lost his embarrassment and gained the whole of Lisa's attention as well. He spoke with deep feeling, under the influence of the strong impression he had just received, and he succeeded in telling his story well and circumstantially. In old days in Moscow he had been fond of coming to Lisa and describing to her what had just happened to him, what he had read, or what he remembered of his childhood. Sometimes they had made daydreams and woven whole romances together, generally cheerful and amusing ones. Now they both felt suddenly transported to the old days in Moscow, 2 years before. Lisa was extremely touched by his story. Alyosha described Ilusha with warm feeling. When he finished describing how the luckless man trampled on the money, Lisa could not help clasping her hands and crying out, "So you didn't give him the money? So you let him run away? Oh dear, you ought to have run after him." "No, Lisa, it's better I didn't run after him," said Alyosha, getting up from his chair and walking thoughtfully across the room. "How so? How is it better? Now they are without food and their case is hopeless." "Not hopeless, for the 200 rubles will still come to them. He'll take the money tomorrow. Tomorrow he will be sure to take it," said Alyosha, pacing up and down, pondering. "You see, Lisa," he went on, stopping suddenly before her, "I made one blunder, but that, even that, is all for the best." "What blunder? And why is it for the best?" "I'll tell you. He is a man of weak and timorous character. He has suffered so much and is very good-natured. I keep wondering why he took offense so suddenly, for I assure you, up to the last minute, he did not know that he was going to trample on the notes, and I think now that there was a great deal to offend him, and it could not have been otherwise in his position. To begin with, he was sore at having been so glad of the money in my presence, and not having concealed it from me. If he had been pleased, but not so much, if he had not shown it, if he had begun affecting scruples and difficulties, as other people do when they take money, he might still endure to take it. But he was too genuinely delighted, and that was mortifying. Ah, Lizzie, he's a good and truthful man. That's the worst of the whole business. All the while he talked, his voice was so weak, so broken, he talked so fast, so fast. He kept laughing such a laugh, or perhaps he was crying. Yes, I am sure he was crying, he was so delighted. And he talked about his daughters, and about the situation he could get in another town. And when he had poured out his heart, he felt ashamed at having shown me his inmost soul like that. So he began to hate me at once. He is one of those awfully sensitive poor people. What had made him feel most ashamed was that he had given in too soon and accepted me as a friend, you see. At first, he almost flew at me and tried to intimidate me, but as soon as he saw the money, he had begun embracing me. He kept touching me with his hands. This must have been how he came to feel it all so humiliating. And then I made that blunder, a very important one. I suddenly said to him that if he had not money enough to move to another town, we would give it to him. And indeed, I myself would give him as much as he wanted out of my own money. That struck him all at once. Why, he thought, did I put myself forward to help him? You know, Lisa, it's awfully hard for a man who has been injured when other people look at him as though they were his benefactors. I've heard that. Father Zosima told me so. I don't know how to put it, but I have often seen it myself, and I feel like that myself, too. And the worst of it was that though he did not know, up to the very last minute, that he would trample on the notes, he had a kind of presentiment of it. I am sure of that. That's just what made him so ecstatic, that he had that presentiment. And though it's so dreadful, it's all for the best. In fact, I believe nothing better could have happened. Why, why could nothing better have happened? Cried Lisa, looking with great surprise at Alyosha. Because if he had taken the money, in an hour after getting home, he would be crying with mortification. That's just what would have happened, and most likely he would have come to me early tomorrow, and perhaps have flung the notes at me and trampled upon them as he did just now. But now he has gone home awfully proud and triumphant, though he knows he has ruined himself. So now nothing could be easier than to make him accept the 200 rubles by tomorrow, for he has already vindicated his honor, tossed away the money, and trampled it under foot. He couldn't know when he did it that I should bring it to him again tomorrow, and yet he is in terrible need of that money. Though he is proud of himself now, yet even today he'll be thinking what a help he has lost. He will think of it more than ever at night, will dream of it, and by tomorrow morning he may be ready to run to me to ask forgiveness. It's just then that I'll appear. Here, you are a proud man, I shall say. You have shown it. But now, take the money and forgive us. And then he will take it. Alyosha was carried away with joy as he uttered his last words. And then he will take it. Lisa clapped her hands. Ah, that's true. I understand that perfectly now. Ah, Alyosha, how do you know all this? So young, and yet he knows what's in the heart. I should never have worked it out. The great thing now is to persuade him that he is on an equal footing with us, in spite of his taking money from us, Alyosha went on in his excitement, and not only on an equal, but even on a higher footing. On a higher footing is charming, Alexei Fyodorovitch, but go on, go on. You mean there isn't such an expression as on a higher footing, but that doesn't matter because— Oh, no, of course it doesn't matter. Forgive me, Alyosha, dear. You know, I scarcely respected you till now. That is, I respected you, but on an equal footing. But now I shall begin to respect you on a higher footing. Don't be angry, dear, at my joking, she put in at once, with strong feeling. I am absurd and small. But you. Listen, Alexei Fyodorovitch. Isn't there in all our analysis, I mean your analysis— no, better call it ours— aren't we showing contempt for him, for that poor man, in analyzing his soul like this, as it were, from above, eh? In deciding so certainly that he will take the money? No, Lisa, it's not contempt, Alyosha answered, as though he had prepared himself for the question. I was thinking of that on the way here. How can it be contempt when we are all like him, when we are all just the same as he is? For you know we are just the same, no better. If we are better, we should have been just the same in his place. I don't know about you, Lisa, but I consider that I have a sordid soul in many ways, and his soul is not sordid. On the contrary, full of fine feeling. No, Lisa, I have no contempt for him. Do you know, Lisa, my elder told me once to care for most people exactly as one would for children, and for some of them as one would for the sick in hospitals. Ah, Alexei Fyodorovitch, dear, let us care for people as we would for the sick. Let us, Lisa. I am ready. Though I am not altogether ready in myself. I am sometimes very impatient, and at other times I don't see things. It's different with you. Ah, I don't believe it. Alexei Fyodorovitch, how happy I am. I am so glad you say so, Lisa. Alexei Fyodorovitch, you are wonderfully good, but you are sometimes sort of formal. And yet you are not a bit formal, really. Go to the door, open it gently, and see whether Mamma is listening, said Lisa, in a nervous, hurried whisper. Alyosha went, opened the door, and reported that no one was listening. Come here, Alexei Fyodorovitch, Lisa went on, flushing redder and redder. Give me your hand. That's right. I have to make a great confession. I didn't write to you yesterday in joke, but in earnest, and she hid her eyes with her hand. It was evident that she was greatly ashamed of the confession. Suddenly she snatched his hand and impulsively kissed it 3 times. Ah, Lisi, what a good thing, cried Alyosha joyfully. You know, I was perfectly sure you were in earnest. Sure, upon my word. She put aside his hand, but did not leave go of it, blushing hotly and laughing a little happy laugh. I kiss his hand, and he says, what a good thing. But her reproach was undeserved. Alyosha, too, was greatly overcome. I should like to please you always, Lisa, but I don't know how to do it, he muttered, blushing too. Alyosha, dear, you are cold and rude. Do you see? He has chosen me as his wife, and is quite settled about it. He is sure I was in earnest. What a thing to say. Why, that's impertinence. That's what it is. Why? Was it wrong of me to feel sure? Alyosha asked, laughing suddenly. Ah, Alyosha, on the contrary, it was delightfully right, cried Lisa, looking tenderly and happily at him. Alyosha stood still, holding her hand in his. Suddenly he stooped down and kissed her on her lips. Oh, what are you doing? Cried Lisa. Alyosha was terribly abashed. Oh, forgive me if I shouldn't. Perhaps I'm awfully stupid. You said I was cold, so I kissed you, but I see it was stupid. Lisa laughed and hid her face in her hands. And in that dress, she ejaculated in the midst of her mirth. But she suddenly ceased laughing and became serious, almost stern. Alyosha, we must put off kissing. We are not ready for that yet, and we shall have a long time to wait, she ended suddenly. Tell me rather why you, who are so clever, so intellectual, so observant, Choose a little idiot, an invalid like me. Ah, Alyosha, I am awfully happy, for I don't deserve you a bit. You do, Lise. I shall be leaving the monastery altogether in a few days. If I go into the world, I must marry. I know that. He told me to marry too. Whom could I marry better than you? And who would have me except you? I have been thinking it over. In the first place, you've known me from a child, and you've a great many qualities I haven't. You are more light-hearted than I am. Above all, you are more innocent than I am. I have been brought into contact with many, many things already. Ah, you don't know, but I too am a Karamazov. What does it matter if you do laugh and make jokes, and at me too? Go on laughing. I am so glad you do. You laugh like a little child, but you think like a martyr. Like a martyr? How? Yes, Lisa, your question just now. Whether we weren't showing contempt for that poor man by dissecting his soul, that was the question of a sufferer. You see, I don't know how to express it, but anyone who thinks of such questions is capable of suffering. Sitting in your invalid chair, you must have thought over many things already. Alyosha, give me your hand. Why are you taking it away? Murmured Lise in a failing voice, weak with happiness. Listen, Alyosha. What will you wear when you come out of the monastery? What sort of suit? Don't laugh. Don't be angry. It's very, very important to me. I haven't thought about the suit, Lise, but I'll wear whatever you like. I should like you to have a dark blue velvet coat, a white piqué waistcoat, and a soft grey felt hat. Tell me, did you believe that I didn't care for you when I said I didn't mean what I wrote? No, I didn't believe it. Oh, you insupportable person, you are incorrigible. You see, I knew that you seemed to care for me, but I pretended to believe that you didn't care for me to make it easier for you. That makes it worse, worse and better than all. Alyosha, I am awfully fond of you. Just before you came this morning, I tried my fortune. I decided I would ask you for my letter, and if you brought it out calmly and gave it to me, as might have been expected from you, it would mean that you did not love me at all, that you felt nothing, and were simply a stupid boy, good for nothing, and that I am ruined. But you left the letter at home, and that cheered me. You left it behind on purpose, so as not to give it back, because you knew I would ask for it. That was it, wasn't it? Ah, Lisa, it was not so a bit. The letter is with me now, and it was this morning, in this pocket. Here it is. Alyosha pulled the letter out laughing and showed it her at a distance. But I am not going to give it to you. Look at it from here. Why, then you told a lie. You, a monk, told a lie. I told a lie, if you like. Alyosha laughed too. I told a lie so as not to give you back the letter. It's very precious to me, he added suddenly, with strong feeling, and again he flushed. It always will be, and I won't give it up to anyone. Lise looked at him joyfully. Alyosha, she murmured again, look at the door. Isn't Mama listening? Very well, Lisa, I'll look. But wouldn't it be better not to look? Why suspect your mother of such meanness? What meanness? As for her spying on her daughter, it's her right. It's not meanness, cried Lisa, firing up. You may be sure, Alexei Fyodorovitch, that when I am a mother, if I have a daughter like myself, I shall certainly spy on her. Really, Lisa? That's not right. Oh, my goodness, what has meanness to do with it? If she were listening to some ordinary worldly conversation, it would be meanness, but when her own daughter is shut up with a young man. Listen, Alyosha, do you know I shall spy upon you as soon as we are married, and let me tell you I shall open all your letters and read them, so you may as well be prepared. Yes, of course, if so, muttered Alyosha, only it's not right. Ah, how contemptuous. Alyosha, dear, we won't quarrel the very first day. I'd better tell you the whole truth. Of course, it's very wrong to spy on people. And of course, I am not right, and you are, only I shall spy on you all the same. Do then, you won't find out anything, laughed Alyosha. And Alyosha, will you give in to me? We must decide that too. I shall be delighted to, Lisa, and certain to, only not in the most important things. Even if you don't agree with me, I shall do my duty in the most important things. That's right. But let me tell you, I am ready to give in to you not only in the most important matters, but in everything. And I am ready to vow to do so now, in everything, and for all my life, cried Lisa fervently. And I'll do it gladly, gladly. What's more, I'll swear never to spy on you, never once, never to read one of your letters. For you are right, and I am not. And though I shall be awfully tempted to spy, I know that I won't do it since you consider it dishonorable. You are my conscience now. Listen, Alexei Fyodorovitch, why have you been so sad lately, both yesterday and today? I know you have a lot of anxiety and trouble, but I see you have some special grief besides, some secret one, perhaps. Yes, Lisa, I have a secret one too, answered Alyosha mournfully. I see you love me, since you guessed that. What grief? What about? Can you tell me? Asked Lisa with timid entreaty. I'll tell you later, Lisa, afterwards, said Alyosha, confused. Now you wouldn't understand it, perhaps, and perhaps I couldn't explain it. I know your brothers and your father are worrying you too. Yes, my brothers too, murmured Alyosha, pondering. I don't like your brother Ivan, Alyosha, said Lisa suddenly. He noticed this remark with some surprise, but did not answer it. My brothers are destroying themselves, he went on. My father too, and they are destroying others with them. It's the primitive force of the Karamazovs, as Father Paisy said the other day, a crude, unbridled, earthly force. Does the Spirit of God move above that force? Even that I don't know. I only know that I too am a Karamazov. Me a monk, a monk. Am I a monk, Lisa? You said just now that I was. Yes, I did. And perhaps I don't even believe in God. You don't believe? What is the matter? Said Lisa quietly and gently. But Alyosha did not answer. There was something too mysterious, too subjective in these last words of his, perhaps obscure to himself, but yet torturing him. And now, on the top of it all, my friend, the best man in the world is leaving the earth. If you knew, Lisa, how bound up in soul I am with him. And then I shall be left alone. I shall come to you, Lisa. For the future we will be together. Yes, together, together. Henceforward we shall be always together, all our lives. Listen, kiss me. I allow you. Alyosha kissed her. Come, now go. Christ be with you. And she made the sign of the cross over him. Make haste back to him while he is alive. I see I've kept you cruelly. I'll pray today for him and you. Alyosha, we shall be happy. Shall we be happy, shall we? I believe we shall, Lisa. Alyosha thought it better not to go in to Madame Holikov, and was going out of the house without saying goodbye to her. But no sooner had he opened the door than he found Madame Holikov standing before him. From the first word, Alyosha guessed that she had been waiting on purpose to meet him. Alexei Fyodorovitch, this is awful. This is all childish nonsense and ridiculous. I trust you won't dream. It's foolishness, nothing but foolishness, she said, attacking him at once. Only don't tell her that, said Alyosha, or she will be upset, and that's bad for her now. Sensible advice from a sensible young man. Am I to understand that you only agreed with her from compassion for her invalid state, because you didn't want to irritate her by contradiction? Oh, no, not at all. I was quite serious in what I said, Alyosha declared stoutly. To be serious about it is impossible, unthinkable, and in the first place I shall never be at home to you again, and I shall take her away, you may be sure of that. But why? Asked Alyosha. It's all so far off. We may have to wait another year and a half. Ah, Alexei Fyodorovitch, that's true, of course, and you'll have time to quarrel and separate 1,000 times in a year and a half, but I am so unhappy. Though it's such nonsense, it's a great blow to me. I feel like Famasov in the last scene of Sorrow from Wit. You are Chatsky and she is Sofia, and, only fancy, I've run down to meet you on the stairs, and in the play the fatal scene takes place on the staircase. I heard it all. I almost dropped. So this is the explanation of her dreadful night and her hysterics of late. It means love to the daughter, but death to the mother. I might as well be in my grave at once. And a more serious matter still, what is this letter she has written? Show it me at once. At once. No, there's no need. Tell me, how is Katerina Ivanovna now? I must know. She still lies in delirium. She has not regained consciousness. Her aunts are here, but they do nothing but sigh and give themselves airs. Herzenstube came, and he was so alarmed that I didn't know what to do for him. I nearly sent for a doctor to look after him. He was driven home in my carriage, and on the top of it all, you and this letter. It's true nothing can happen for a year and a half. In the name of all that's holy, in the name of your dying elder, show me that letter, Alexei Fyodorovitch. I'm her mother. Hold it in your hand, if you like, and I will read it so. No, I won't show it to you. Even if she sanctioned it, I wouldn't. I am coming tomorrow, and if you like, we can talk over many things, but now, goodbye. And Alyosha ran downstairs and into the street. Chapter 2. Smerdyakov with a guitar. He had no time to lose, indeed. Even while he was saying goodbye to Lisa, the thought had struck him that he must attempt some stratagem to find his brother Dmitri, who was evidently keeping out of his way. It was getting late, nearly 3 o'clock. Alyosha's whole soul turned to the monastery, to his dying saint, but the necessity of seeing Dmitri outweighed everything. The conviction that a great inevitable catastrophe was about to happen grew stronger in Alyosha's mind with every hour. What that catastrophe was, and what he would say at that moment to his brother, he could perhaps not have said definitely. Even if my benefactor must die without me, anyway, I won't have to reproach myself all my life with the thought that I might have saved something and did not, but passed by and hastened home. If I do as I intend, I shall be following his great precept. His plan was to catch his brother Dmitri unawares, to climb over the fence, as he had the day before, get into the garden and sit in the summer-house. If Dmitri were not there, thought Alyosha, he would not announce himself to Foma or the women of the house, but would remain hidden in the summer-house, even if he had to wait there till evening. If, as before, Dmitri were lying in wait for Grushenka to come, he would be very likely to come to the summer-house. Alyosha did not, however, give much thought to the details of his plan, but resolved to act upon it, even if it meant not getting back to the monastery that day. Everything happened without hindrance. He climbed over the hurdle almost in the same spot as the day before and stole into the summer-house unseen. He did not want to be noticed. The woman of the house and Foma, too, if he were here, might be loyal to his brother and obey his instructions, and so refuse to let Alyosha come into the garden, or might warn Dmitri that he was being sought and inquired for. There was no one in the summer-house. Alyosha sat down and began to wait. He looked round the summer-house, which somehow struck him as a great deal more ancient than before. Though the day was just as fine as yesterday, it seemed a wretched little place this time. There was a circle on the table, left no doubt from the glass of brandy having been spilt the day before. Foolish and irrelevant ideas strayed about his mind, as they always do in a time of tedious waiting. He wondered, for instance, why he had sat down precisely in the same place as before. Why not in the other seat? At last he felt very depressed by suspense and uncertainty. But he had not sat there more than a quarter of an hour when he suddenly heard the thrum of a guitar somewhere quite close. People were sitting, or had only just sat down, somewhere in the bushes not more than 20 paces away. Alyosha suddenly recollected that on coming out of the summer-house the day before, he had caught a glimpse of an old green low garden seat among the bushes on the left, by the fence. The people must be sitting on it now. Who were they? A man's voice suddenly began singing in a sugary falsetto, accompanying himself on the guitar. With invincible force. I am bound to my dear. O Lord, have mercy. On her and on me. On her and on me. On her and on me. The voice ceased. It was a lackey's tenor and a lackey's song. Another voice, a woman's, suddenly asked insinuatingly and bashfully, though with mincing affectation, "Why haven't you been to see us for so long, Pavel Fyodorovitch? Why do you always look down upon us?" "Not at all. answered a man's voice politely, but with emphatic dignity. It was clear that the man had the best of the position and that the woman was making advances. I believe the man must be Smerdyakov, thought Alyosha, from his voice, and the lady must be the daughter of the house here, who has come from Moscow, the one who wears the dress with a tail and goes to Marfa for soup. I am awfully fond of verses of all kinds, if they rhyme, the woman's voice continued. Why don't you go on? The man sang again. What do I care for royal wealth, if but my dear one be in health? Lord have mercy on her and on me, on her and on me, on her and on me. It was even better last time, observed the woman's voice. You sang, If my darling be in health. It sounded more tender. I suppose you've forgotten today. Poetry is rubbish, said Smerdyakov curtly. Oh, no, I am very fond of poetry. So far as it's poetry, it's essential rubbish. Consider yourself whoever talks in rhyme. And if we were all to talk in rhyme, even though it were decreed by government, we shouldn't say much, should we? Poetry is no good, Maria Kondratyevna. How clever you are. How is it you've gone so deep into everything? The woman's voice was more and more insinuating. I could have done better than that. I could have known more than that if it had not been for my destiny from my childhood up. I would have shot a man in a duel if he called me names because I am descended from a filthy beggar and have no father. And they used to throw it in my teeth in Moscow. It had reached them from here, thanks to Grigory Vassilievich. Grigory Vassilievich blames me for rebelling against my birth, but I would have sanctioned their killing me before I was born, that I might not have come into the world at all. They used to say in the market, and your mamma too, with great lack of delicacy, set off telling me that her hair was like a mat on her head, and that she was short of 5 foot by a wee bit. Why talk of a wee bit while she might have said a little bit, like everyone else? She wanted to make it touching, a regular peasant's feeling. Can a Russian peasant be said to feel in comparison with an educated man? He can't be said to have feeling at all, in his ignorance. From my childhood up, when I hear a wee bit, I am ready to burst with rage. I hate all Russia, Maria Kondratyevna. If you'd been a cadet in the army, or a young hussar, you wouldn't have talked like that, but would have drawn your saber to defend all Russia. I don't want to be a hussar, Maria Kondratyevna, and, what's more, I should like to abolish all soldiers. And when an enemy comes, who's going to defend us? There's no need of defense. In 1812, there was a great invasion of Russia by Napoleon, first emperor of the French, father of the present one, and it would have been a good thing if they had conquered us. A clever nation would have conquered a very stupid one and annexed it. We should have had quite different institutions. Are they so much better in their own country than we are? I wouldn't change a dandy I know of for 3 young Englishmen, observed Maria Kondratyevna tenderly, doubtless accompanying her words with a most languishing glance. That's as one prefers. But you are just like a foreigner, just like a most gentlemanly foreigner. I tell you that, though it makes me bashful. If you care to know, the folks there and ours here are just alike in their vice. They are swindlers, only there the scoundrel wears polished boots, and here he grovels in filth and sees no harm in it. The Russian people want thrashing, as Fyodor Pavlovitch said very truly yesterday, though he is mad, and all his children. You said yourself you had such a respect for Ivan Fyodorovitch. But he said I was a stinking lackey. He thinks that I might be unruly. He is mistaken there. If I had a certain sum in my pocket, I would have left here long ago. Dmitri Fyodorovitch is lower than any lackey in his behavior, in his mind, and in his poverty. He doesn't know how to do anything, and yet he is respected by everyone. I may be only a soup maker, but with luck I could open a cafe restaurant in Petrovka, in Moscow, for my cookery is something special, and there's no one in Moscow, except the foreigners, whose cookery is anything special. Dmitri Fyodorovitch is a beggar, but if he were to challenge the son of the first count in the country, he'd fight him. Though in what way is he better than I am? For he is ever so much stupider than I am. Look at the money he has wasted without any need. It must be lovely, a duel, Maria Kondratyevna observed suddenly. How so? It must be so dreadful and so brave, especially when young officers with pistols in their hands pop at one another for the sake of some lady. A perfect picture. Ah, if only girls were allowed to look on, I'd give anything to see one. It's all very well when you are firing at someone, but when he is firing straight in your mug, you must feel pretty silly. You'd be glad to run away, Maria Kondratyevna. You don't mean you would run away? But Smerdyakov did not deign to reply. After a moment's silence, the guitar tinkled again, and he sang again in the same falsetto. Whatever you may say, I shall go far away. Life will be bright and gay. In the city far away. I shall not grieve. I shall not grieve at all. I don't intend to grieve at all. Then something unexpected happened. Alyosha suddenly sneezed. They were silent. Alyosha got up and walked towards them. He found Smerdyakov dressed up and wearing polished boots, his hair pomaded and perhaps curled. The guitar lay on the garden seat. His companion was the daughter of the house, wearing a light blue dress with a train 2 yards long. She was young and would not have been bad-looking, but that her face was so round and terribly freckled. "Will my brother Dmitri soon be back?" asked Alyosha, with as much composure as he could. Smerdyakov got up slowly. Maria Kondratyevna rose too. "How am I to know about Dmitri Fyodorovitch? It's not as if I were his keeper," answered Smerdyakov quietly, distinctly, and superciliously. "But I simply asked whether you do know," Alyosha explained. "I know nothing of his whereabouts, and don't want to. But my brother told me that you let him know all that goes on in the house, and promised to let him know when Agrafena Alexandrovna comes." Smerdyakov turned a deliberate, unmoved glance upon him. "And how did you get in this time, since the gate was bolted an hour ago?" he asked, looking at Alyosha. "I came in from the back alley, over the fence, and went straight to the summer house. I hope you'll forgive me," he added, addressing Maria Kondratyevna. "I was in a hurry to find my brother." "Ah, as though we could take it amiss in you," drawled Maria Kondratyevna, flattered by Alyosha's apology. "For Dmitri, Fyodorovitch often goes to the summer house in that way. We don't know he is here, and he is sitting in the summer house. I am very anxious to find him, or to learn from you where he is now. Believe me, it's on business of great importance to him." "He never tells us," lisped Maria Kondratyevna. "Though I used to come here as a friend," Smerdyakov began again, "Dmitri Fyodorovitch has pestered me in a merciless way, even here by his incessant questions about the master. 'What news?' he'll ask. 'What's going on in there now? Who's coming and going?' And can't I tell him something more? Twice already he's threatened me with death." "With death?" Alyosha exclaimed in surprise. "Do you suppose he'd think much of that, with his temper, which you had a chance of observing yourself yesterday? He says if I let Agrafena Alexandrovna in and she passes the night there, I'll be the first to suffer for it. I am terribly afraid of him, and if I were not even more afraid of doing so, I ought to let the police know. God only knows what he might not do. His Honour said to him the other day, 'I'll pound you in a mortar,'" added Maria Kondratyevna. "Oh, if it's pounding in a mortar, it may be only talk," observed Alyosha. "If I could meet him, I might speak to him about that too." "Well, the only thing I can tell you is this," said Smerdyakov, as though thinking better of it. "I am here as an old friend and neighbour, and it would be odd if I didn't come. On the other hand, Ivan Fyodorovitch sent me first thing this morning to your brother's lodging in Lake Street, without a letter, but with a message to Dmitri Fyodorovitch to go to dine with him at the restaurant here in the marketplace. I went, but didn't find Dmitri Fyodorovitch at home, though it was 8 o'clock. He's been here, but he is quite gone. Those were the very words of his landlady. It's as though there was an understanding between them. Perhaps at this moment he is in the restaurant with Ivan Fyodorovitch, for Ivan Fyodorovitch has not been home to dinner, and Fyodor Pavlovitch dined alone an hour ago and is gone to lie down. But I beg you most particularly not to speak of me and of what I have told you, for he'd kill me for nothing at all." "Brother Ivan invited Dmitri to the restaurant today?" repeated Alyosha quickly. "That's so." "The Metropolis Tavern in the marketplace?" "The very same." "That's quite likely," cried Alyosha. much excited. "Thank you, Smerdyakov. That's important. I'll go there at once." "Don't betray me," Smerdyakov called after him. "Oh no, I'll go to the tavern as though by chance. Don't be anxious." "But wait a minute. I'll open the gate to you," cried Maria Kondratyevna. "No, it's a shortcut. I'll get over the fence again." What he had heard threw Alyosha into great agitation. He ran to the tavern. It was impossible for him to go into the tavern in his monastic dress, but he could inquire at the entrance for his brothers and call them down. But just as he reached the tavern, a window was flung open, and his brother Ivan called down to him from it. "Alyosha, can't you come up here to me? I shall be awfully grateful." "To be sure I can, only I don't quite know whether in this dress. But I'm in a room apart. Come up the steps. I'll run down to meet you." A minute later, Alyosha was sitting beside his brother. Ivan was alone dining. Chapter 3. The brothers make friends. Ivan was not, however, in a separate room, but only in a place shut off by a screen so that it was unseen by other people in the room. It was the first room from the entrance with a buffet along the wall. Waiters were continually darting to and fro in it. The only customer in the room was an old retired military man drinking tea in a corner. But there was the usual bustle going on in the other rooms of the tavern. There were shouts for the waiters, the sound of popping corks, the click of billiard balls, the drone of the organ. Alyosha knew that Ivan did not usually visit this tavern and disliked taverns in general. So he must have come here, he reflected, simply to meet Dmitri by arrangement. Yet Dmitri was not there. "Shall I order you fish, soup, or anything? You don't live on tea alone, I suppose," cried Ivan, apparently delighted at having got hold of Alyosha. He had finished dinner and was drinking tea. "Let me have soup and tea afterwards. I am hungry," said Alyosha gaily. "And cherry jam?" "They have it here. You remember how you used to love cherry jam when you were little?" "You remember that?" "Let me have jam too. I like it still." Ivan rang for the waiter and ordered soup, jam, and tea. "I remember everything, Alyosha. I remember you till you were 11. I was nearly 15. There's such a difference between 15 and 11 that brothers are never companions at those ages. I don't know whether I was fond of you even. When I went away to Moscow for the first few years, I never thought of you at all. Then, when you came to Moscow yourself, we only met once somewhere, I believe. And now I've been here more than 3 months, and so far we have scarcely said a word to each other. Tomorrow I am going away, and I was just thinking as I sat here how I could see you to say goodbye, and just then you passed." "Were you very anxious to see me then?" "Very. I want to get to know you once for all, and I want you to know me, and then to say goodbye. I believe it's always best to get to know people just before leaving them. I've noticed how you've been looking at me these 3 months. There has been a continual look of expectation in your eyes, and I can't endure that. That's how it is I've kept away from you. But in the end, I have learned to respect you." The little man stands firm, I thought. Though I am laughing, I am serious. You do stand firm, don't you? I like people who are firm like that, whatever it is they stand by, even if they are such little fellows as you. Your expectant eyes ceased to annoy me. I grew fond of them in the end, those expectant eyes. You seem to love me for some reason, Alyosha. I do love you, Ivan. Dmitri says of you, Ivan is a tomb. I say of you, Ivan is a riddle. You are a riddle to me even now. But I understand something in you, and I did not understand it till this morning." "What's that?" laughed Ivan. "You won't be angry?" Alyosha laughed too. "Well?" "That you are just as young as other young men of 23. That you are just a young and fresh and nice boy, green, in fact. Now, have I insulted you dreadfully?" "On the contrary, I am struck by a coincidence," cried Ivan, warmly and good-humouredly. "Would you believe it, that ever since that scene with her, I have thought of nothing else but my youthful greenness, and just as though you guessed that, you begin about it. Do you know I've been sitting here thinking to myself that if I didn't believe in life, if I lost faith in the woman I love, lost faith in the order of things, were convinced, in fact, that everything is a disorderly, damnable, and perhaps devil-ridden chaos, if I were struck by every horror of man's disillusionment. Still, I should want to live, and having once tasted of the cup, I would not turn away from it till I had drained it. At 30, though, I shall be sure to leave the cup, even if I've not emptied it, and turn away, where I don't know. But till I am 30, I know that my youth will triumph over everything, every disillusionment, every disgust with life. I've asked myself many times whether there is in the world any despair that would overcome this frantic and perhaps unseemly thirst for life in me, and I've come to the conclusion that there isn't, that is, till I am 30, and then I shall lose it of myself, I fancy. Some drivelling, consumptive moralists, and poets especially, often call that thirst for life base. It's a feature of the Karamazovs, it's true, that thirst for life regardless of everything. You have it no doubt too, but why is it base? The centripetal force on our planet is still fearfully strong, Alyosha. I have a longing for life, and I go on living in spite of logic. Though I may not believe in the order of the universe, yet I love the sticky little leaves as they open in spring. I love the blue sky. I love some people whom one loves, sometimes without knowing why. I love some great deeds done by men, though I've long ceased perhaps to have faith in them, yet from old habit one's heart prizes them. Here they have brought the soup for you. Eat it. It will do you good. It's first-rate soup. They know how to make it here. I want to travel in Europe, Alyosha. I shall set off from here. And yet I know that I am only going to a graveyard, but it's a most precious graveyard. That's what it is. Precious are the dead that lie there. Every stone over them speaks of such burning life in the past, of such passionate faith in their work, their truth, their struggle and their science, that I know I shall fall on the ground and kiss those stones and weep over them, though I'm convinced in my heart that it's long been nothing but a graveyard, and I shall not weep from despair, but simply because I shall be happy in my tears. I shall steep my soul in my emotion. I love the sticky leaves in spring, the blue sky. That's all it is. It's not a matter of intellect or logic. It's loving with one's inside, with one's stomach. One loves the first strength of one's youth. Do you understand anything of my tirade, Alyosha? Ivan laughed suddenly. I understand too well, Ivan. One longs to love with one's inside, with one's stomach. You said that so well, and I am awfully glad that you have such a longing for life, cried Alyosha. I think everyone should love life above everything in the world. Love life more than the meaning of it? Certainly. Love it, regardless of logic, as you say. It must be regardless of logic, and it's only then one will understand the meaning of it. I have thought so a long time. Half your work is done, Ivan. You love life. Now you've only to try to do the second half, and you are saved. You are trying to save me, but perhaps I am not lost. And what does your second half mean? Why, one has to raise up your dead, who perhaps have not died after all. Come, let me have tea. I am so glad of our talk, Ivan. I see you are feeling inspired. I am awfully fond of such professions de foi from such novices. You are a steadfast person, Alexei. Is it true that you mean to leave the monastery? Yes, my elder sends me out into the world. We shall see each other then in the world. We shall meet before I am 30, when I shall begin to turn aside from the cup. Father doesn't want to turn aside from his cup till he is 70. He dreams of hanging on to 80, in fact, so he says. He means it only too seriously, though he is a buffoon. He stands on a firm rock, too. He stands on his sensuality, though after we are 30, indeed, there may be nothing else to stand on. But to hang on to 70 is nasty, better only to 30. One might retain a shadow of nobility by deceiving oneself. Have you seen Dmitri today? No, but I saw Smerdyakov, and Alyosha rapidly, though minutely, described his meeting with Smerdyakov. Ivan began listening anxiously and questioned him. But he begged me not to tell Dmitri that he had told me about him, added Alyosha. Ivan frowned and pondered. Are you frowning on Smerdyakov's account? Asked Alyosha. Yes, on his account. Damn him. I certainly did want to see Dmitri. But now there's no need, said Ivan reluctantly. But are you really going so soon, brother? Yes. What of Dmitri and father? How will it end? Asked Alyosha anxiously. You are always harping upon it. What have I to do with it? Am I my brother Dmitri's keeper? Ivan snapped irritably, but then he suddenly smiled bitterly. Cain's answer about his murdered brother, wasn't it? Perhaps that's what you're thinking at this moment. Well, damn it all, I can't stay here to be their keeper, can I? I've finished what I had to do, and I am going. Do you imagine I am jealous of Dmitri, that I've been trying to steal his beautiful Katerina Ivanovna for the last 3 months? Nonsense. I had business of my own. I finished it. I am going. I finished it just now. You were witness. At Katerina Ivanovna's? Yes, and I've released myself once for all. And after all, what have I to do with Dmitri? Dmitri doesn't come in. I had my own business to settle with Katerina Ivanovna. You know, on the contrary, that Dmitri behaved as though there was an understanding between us. I didn't ask him to do it, but he solemnly handed her over to me and gave us his blessing. It's all too funny. Ah, Alyosha, if you only knew how light my heart is now. Would you believe I sat here eating my dinner and was nearly ordering champagne to celebrate my first hour of freedom. Pfoo. It's been going on nearly 6 months, and all at once I've thrown it off. I could never have guessed, even yesterday, how easy it would be to put an end to it if I wanted. You are speaking of your love, Ivan. Of my love, if you like. I fell in love with the young lady. I worried myself over her, and she worried me. I sat watching over her, and all at once it's collapsed. I spoke this morning with inspiration, but I went away and roared with laughter. Would you believe it? Yes, it's the literal truth. You seem very merry about it now, observed Alyosha, looking into his face, which had suddenly grown brighter. But how could I tell that I didn't care for her a bit? Ha ha! It appears after all I didn't, and yet how she attracted me. How attractive she was just now when I made my speech. And do you know she attracts me awfully even now, yet how easy it is to leave her. Do you think I am boasting? No, only perhaps it wasn't love. Alyosha, laughed Ivan, don't make reflections about love. It's unseemly for you. How you rushed into the discussion this morning. I've forgotten to kiss you for it. But how she tormented me. It certainly was sitting by a laceration. Ah, she knew how I loved her. She loved me and not Dmitri, Ivan insisted gaily. Her feeling for Dmitri was simply a self-laceration. All I told her just now was perfectly true, but the worst of it is, it may take her 15 or 20 years to find out that she doesn't care for Dmitri and loves me whom she torments, and perhaps she may never find it out at all, in spite of her lesson today. Well, it's better so. I can simply go away for good. By the way, how is she now? What happened after I departed? Alyosha told him she had been hysterical and that she was now, he heard, unconscious and delirious. Isn't Madame Holikov laying it on? I think not. I must find out. Nobody dies of hysterics, though. They don't matter. God gave woman hysterics as a relief. I won't go to her at all. Why push myself forward again? But you told her that she had never cared for you. I did that on purpose. Alyosha, shall I call for some champagne? Let us drink to my freedom. Ah, if only you knew how glad I am. No, brother, we had better not drink, said Alyosha suddenly. Besides, I feel somehow depressed. Yes, you've been depressed a long time. I've noticed it. Have you settled to go tomorrow morning, then? Morning? I didn't say I should go in the morning, but perhaps it may be the morning. Would you believe it? I dined here today only to avoid dining with the old man. I loathe him so. I should have left long ago, so far as he is concerned. But why are you so worried about my going away? We've plenty of time before I go, an eternity. If you are going away tomorrow, what do you mean by an eternity? But what does it matter to us? Laughed Ivan. We've time enough for our talk, for what brought us here. Why do you look so surprised? Answer. Why have we met here? To talk of my love for Katerina Ivanovna, of the old man and Dmitri, of foreign travel, of the fatal position of Russia, of the Emperor Napoleon. Is that it? No? Then you know what for. It's different for other people. But we in our green youth have to settle the eternal questions first of all. That's what we care about. Young Russia is talking about nothing but the eternal questions now. Just when the old folks are all taken up with practical questions, why have you been looking at me in expectation for the last 3 months? To ask me, what do you believe, or don't you believe at all? That's what your eyes have been meaning for these 3 months, haven't they? Perhaps so, smiled Alyosha. You are not laughing at me now, Ivan. Me laughing. I don't want to wound my little brother, who has been watching me with such expectation for 3 months. Alyosha, look straight at me. Of course I am just such a little boy as you are, only not a novice. And what have Russian boys been doing up till now? Some of them, I mean. In this stinking tavern, for instance, here, they meet and sit down in a corner. They've never met in their lives before, and when they go out of the tavern, they won't meet again for 40 years. And what do they talk about in that momentary halt in the tavern? Of the eternal questions, of the existence of God and immortality. And those who do not believe in God talk of socialism or anarchism, of the transformation of all humanity on a new pattern, so that it all comes to the same. They're the same questions turned inside out. And masses of the most original Russian boys do nothing but talk of the eternal questions. Isn't it so? Yes, for real, Russians, the questions of God's existence and of immortality, or, as you say, the same questions turned inside out, come first and foremost, of course, and so they should, said Alyosha, still watching his brother with the same gentle and inquiring smile. Well, Alyosha, it's sometimes very unwise to be a Russian at all, but anything stupider than the way Russian boys spend their time one can hardly imagine. But there's one Russian boy called Alyosha I am awfully fond of. How nicely you put that in. Alyosha laughed suddenly. Well, tell me where to begin. Give your orders. The existence of God, eh? Begin where you like. You declared yesterday at Father's that there was no God. Alyosha looked searchingly at his brother. I said that yesterday at dinner, on purpose, to tease you, and I saw your eyes glow. But now I've no objection to discussing with you, and I say so very seriously. I want to be friends with you, Alyosha, for I have no friends and want to try it. Well, only fancy. Perhaps I too accept God, laughed Ivan. That's a surprise for you, isn't it? Yes, of course, if you are not joking now. Joking? I was told at the elders yesterday that I was joking. You know, dear boy, there was an old sinner in the 18th century who declared that if there were no God, he would have to be invented. S'il n'existait pas Dieu, il faudrait l'inventer. And man has actually invented God. And what's strange, what would be marvelous, is not that God should really exist. The marvel is that such an idea, the idea of the necessity of God, could enter the head of such a savage, vicious beast as man. So holy it is, so touching, so wise, and so great a credit it does to man. As for me, I've long resolved not to think whether man created God or God man, and I won't go through all the axioms laid down by Russian boys on that subject, all derived from European hypotheses. For what's a hypothesis there is an axiom with the Russian boy, and not only with the boys, but with their teachers too, for our Russian professors are often just the same boys themselves. And so I omit all the hypotheses. For what are we aiming at now? I am trying to explain as quickly as possible my essential nature. That is what manner of man I am, what I believe in, and for what I hope. That's it, isn't it? And therefore I tell you that I accept God simply. But you must note this. If God exists, and if he really did create the world, then, as we all know, he created it according to the geometry of Euclid and the human mind, with the conception of only 3 dimensions in space. Yet there have been and still are geometricians and philosophers, and even some of the most distinguished, who doubt whether the whole universe, or to speak more widely, the whole of being, was only created in Euclid's geometry. They even dare to dream that 2 parallel lines, which according to Euclid can never meet on Earth, may meet somewhere in infinity. I have come to the conclusion that, since I can't understand even that, I can't expect to understand about God. I acknowledge humbly that I have no faculty for settling such questions. I have a Euclidean earthly mind, and how could I solve problems that are not of this world? And I advise you never to think about it either, my dear Alyosha, especially about God, whether he exists or not. All such questions are utterly inappropriate for a mind created with an idea of only 3 dimensions. And so I accept God and am glad to, and what's more, I accept his wisdom, his purpose, which are utterly beyond our ken. I believe in the underlying order and the meaning of life. I believe in the eternal harmony in which they say we shall one day be blended. I believe in the word to which the universe is striving, and which itself was with God, and which itself is God, and so on, to infinity. There are all sorts of phrases for it. I seem to be on the right path, don't I? Yet would you believe it? In the final result, I don't accept this world of gods, and, although I know it exists, I don't accept it at all. It's not that I don't accept God, you must understand. It's the world created by him I don't and cannot accept. Let me make it plain. I believe, like a child, that suffering will be healed and made up for, that all the humiliating absurdity of human contradictions will vanish like a pitiful mirage, like the despicable fabrication of the impotent and infinitely small Euclidean mind of man, that in the world's finale, at the moment of eternal harmony, something so precious will come to pass that it will suffice for all hearts, for the comforting of all resentments, for the atonement of all the crimes of humanity, of all the blood they've shed, that it will make it not only possible to forgive, but to justify all that has happened with men. But though all that may come to pass, I don't accept it. I won't accept it. Even if parallel lines do meet, and I see it myself, I shall see it and say that they've met, but still I won't accept it. That's what's at the root of me, Alyosha. That's my creed. I am in earnest in what I say. I began our talk as stupidly as I could on purpose, but I've led up to my confession, for that's all you want. You didn't want to hear about God, but only to know what the brother you love lives by. And so I've told you. Ivan concluded his long tirade with marked and unexpected feeling. "And why did you begin as stupidly as you could?" asked Alyosha, looking dreamily at him. "To begin with, for the sake of being Russian. Russian conversations on such subjects are always carried on inconceivably stupidly. And secondly, the stupider one is, the closer one is to reality. The stupider one is, the clearer one is. Stupidity is brief and artless, while intelligence wriggles and hides itself. Intelligence is a knave, but stupidity is honest and straightforward. I've led the conversation to my despair, and the more stupidly I have presented it, the better for me." "You will explain why you don't accept the world," said Alyosha. "To be sure I will. It's not a secret. That's what I've been leading up to. Dear little brother, I don't want to corrupt you or to turn you from your stronghold. Perhaps I want to be healed by you." Ivan smiled suddenly, quite like a little gentle child. Alyosha had never seen such a smile on his face before. Chapter 4. Rebellion. "I must make you one confession," Ivan began. "I could never understand how one can love one's neighbors. It's just one's neighbors, to my mind, that one can't love, though one might love those at a distance. I once read somewhere of John the Merciful, a saint, that when a hungry, frozen beggar came to him, he took him into his bed, held him in his arms, and began breathing into his mouth, which was putrid and loathsome from some awful disease. I am convinced that he did that from self-laceration, from the self-laceration of falsity, for the sake of the charity imposed by duty, as a penance laid on him. For anyone to love a man, he must be hidden, for as soon as he shows his face, love is gone." "Father Zosima has talked of that more than once," observed Alyosha. "He, too, said that the face of a man often hinders many people not practiced in love from loving him. But yet there's a great deal of love in mankind, and almost Christ-like love. I know that myself, Ivan." "Well, I know nothing of it so far, and can't understand it, and the innumerable mass of mankind are with me there. The question is whether that's due to men's bad qualities, or whether it's inherent in their nature. To my thinking, Christ-like love for men is a miracle impossible on earth. He was God, but we are not gods. Suppose I, for instance, suffer intensely. Another can never know how much I suffer, because he is another and not I. And what's more, a man is rarely ready to admit another's suffering, as though it were a distinction. Why won't he admit it, do you think? Because I smell unpleasant? Because I have a stupid face? Because I once trod on his foot? Besides, there is suffering and suffering. Degrading, humiliating suffering such as humbles me. Hunger, for instance. My benefactor will perhaps allow me. But when you come to higher suffering, for an idea, for instance, he will very rarely admit that. Perhaps because my face strikes him as not at all what he fancies a man should have who suffers for an idea. And so he deprives me instantly of his favour, and not at all from badness of heart. Beggars, especially genteel beggars, ought never to show themselves, but to ask for charity through the newspapers. One can love one's neighbours in the abstract, or even at a distance, but at close quarters it's almost impossible. If it were as on the stage, in the ballet, where if beggars come in, they wear silken rags and tattered lace and beg for alms dancing gracefully, then one might like looking at them. But even then we should not love them. But enough of that. I simply wanted to show you my point of view. I meant to speak of the suffering of mankind generally, but we had better confine ourselves to the sufferings of the children. That reduces the scope of my argument to a tenth of what it would be. Still, we'd better keep to the children, though it does weaken my case. But in the first place, children can be loved even at close quarters, even when they are dirty, even when they are ugly. I fancy, though, children never are ugly. The second reason why I won't speak of grown-up people is that besides being disgusting and unworthy of love, they have a compensation. They've eaten the apple and know good and evil, and they have become like gods. They go on eating it still. But the children haven't eaten anything and are so far innocent. Are you fond of children, Alyosha? I know you are, and you will understand why I prefer to speak of them. If they too suffer horribly on earth, they must suffer for their fathers' sins. They must be punished for their fathers who have eaten the apple. But that reasoning is of the other world and is incomprehensible for the heart of man here on earth. The innocent must not suffer for another's sins, and especially such innocence. You may be surprised at me, Alyosha, but I am awfully fond of children too. And observe cruel people, the violent, the rapacious. The Karamazovs are sometimes very fond of children. Children, while they are quite little, up to 7, for instance, are so remote from grown-up people. They are different creatures, as it were, of a different species. I knew a criminal in prison who had, in the course of his career as a burglar, murdered whole families, including several children. But when he was in prison, he had a strange affection for them. He spent all his time at his window, watching the children playing in the prison yard. He trained one little boy to come up to his window and made great friends with him. You don't know why I am telling you all this, Alyosha. My head aches and I am sad. You speak with a strange air, observed Alyosha uneasily, as though you were not quite yourself. By the way, a Bulgarian I met lately in Moscow, Ivan went on, seeming not to hear his brother's words, told me about the crimes committed by Turks and Circassians in all parts of Bulgaria through fear of a general rising of the Slavs. They burn villages, murder, outrage women and children. They nail their prisoners by the ears to the fences, leave them so till morning, and in the morning they hang them. All sorts of things you can't imagine. People talk sometimes of bestial cruelty, but that's a great injustice and insult to the beasts. A beast can never be so cruel as a man, so artistically cruel. The tiger only tears and gnaws, that's all he can do. He would never think of nailing people by the ears, even if he were able to do it. These Turks took a pleasure in torturing children too, cutting the unborn child from the mother's womb and tossing babies up in the air and catching them on the points of their bayonets before their mother's eyes. Doing it before the mother's eyes was what gave zest to the amusement. Here is another scene that I thought very interesting. Imagine a trembling mother with her baby in her arms, a circle of invading Turks around her. They've planned a diversion. They pet the baby, laugh to make it laugh. They succeed, the baby laughs. At that moment, a Turk points a pistol 4 inches from the baby's face. The baby laughs with glee, holds out its little hands to the pistol, and he pulls the trigger in the baby's face and blows out its brains. Artistic, wasn't it? By the way, Turks are particularly fond of sweet things, they say. "Brother, what are you driving at?" asked Alyosha. "I think if the devil doesn't exist, but man has created him, he has created him in his own image and likeness." "Just as he did God, then," observed Alyosha. "It's wonderful how you can turn words, as Polonius says in Hamlet," laughed Ivan. "You turn my words against me. Well, I am glad. Yours must be a fine God if man created him in his image and likeness. You asked just now what I was driving at. You see, I am fond of collecting certain facts, and, would you believe, I even copy anecdotes of a certain sort from newspapers and books, and I've already got a fine collection. The Turks, of course, have gone into it, but they are foreigners. I have specimens from home that are even better than the Turks. You know we prefer beating, rods and scourges. That's our national institution. Nailing ears is unthinkable for us, for we are, after all, Europeans. But the rod and the scourge we have always with us, and they cannot be taken from us. Abroad now they scarcely do any beating. Manners are more humane, or laws have been passed, so that they don't dare to flog men now. But they make up for it in another way just as national as ours, and so national that it would be practically impossible among us, though I believe we are being inoculated with it, since the religious movement began in our aristocracy. I have a charming pamphlet, translated from the French, describing how, quite recently, 5 years ago, a murderer, Richard, was executed. A young man, I believe, of 23, who repented and was converted to the Christian faith at the very scaffold. This Richard was an illegitimate child who was given as a child of 6 by his parents to some shepherds on the Swiss mountains. They brought him up to work for them. He grew up like a little wild beast among them. The shepherds taught him nothing and scarcely fed or clothed him, but sent him out at 7 to herd the flock in cold and wet, and no one hesitated or scrupled to treat him so. Quite the contrary, they thought they had every right, for Richard had been given to them as a chattel, and they did not even see the necessity of feeding him. Richard himself describes how in those years, like the prodigal son in the Gospel, he longed to eat of the mash given to the pigs, which were fattened for sale, but they wouldn't even give him that, and beat him when he stole from the pigs, and that was how he spent all his childhood and his youth, till he grew up and was strong enough to go away and be a thief. The savage began to earn his living as a day labourer in Geneva. He drank what he earned, he lived like a brute, and finished by killing and robbing an old man. He was caught, tried, and condemned to death. They are not sentimentalists there. And in prison he was immediately surrounded by pastors, members of Christian brotherhoods, philanthropic ladies, and the like. They taught him to read and write in prison, and expounded the gospel to him. They exhorted him, worked upon him, drummed at him incessantly, till at last he solemnly confessed his crime. He was converted. He wrote to the court himself that he was a monster, but that in the end God had vouchsafed him light and shown grace. All Geneva was in excitement about him, all philanthropic and religious Geneva. All the aristocratic and well-bred society of the town rushed to the prison, kissed Richard, and embraced him. "You are our brother, you have found grace." And Richard does nothing but weep with emotion. "Yes, I've found grace. All my youth and childhood I was glad of pig's food, but now even I have found grace. I am dying in the Lord." Yes, Richard, die in the Lord. You have shed blood and must die. Though it's not your fault that you knew not the Lord when you coveted the pig's food and were beaten for stealing it, which was very wrong of you, for stealing is forbidden. But you've shed blood and you must die. And on the last day, Richard, perfectly limp, did nothing but cry and repeat every minute, "This is my happiest day. I am going to the Lord." "Yes," cry the pastors and the judges and philanthropic ladies, "this is the happiest day of your life, for you are going to the Lord." They all walk or drive to the scaffold in procession behind the prison van. At the scaffold they call to Richard, Die, brother, die in the Lord, for even thou hast found grace. And so, covered with his brother's kisses, Richard is dragged onto the scaffold and led to the guillotine, and they chopped off his head in brotherly fashion because he had found grace. Yes, that's characteristic. That pamphlet is translated into Russian by some Russian philanthropists of aristocratic rank and evangelical aspirations, and has been distributed gratis for the enlightenment of the people. The case of Richard is interesting because it's national. Though to us it's absurd to cut off a man's head because he has become our brother and has found grace, yet we have our own speciality, which is all but worse. Our historical pastime is the direct satisfaction of inflicting pain. There are lines in Nekrasov describing how a peasant lashes a horse on the eyes, on its meek eyes. Everyone must have seen it. It's peculiarly Russian. He describes how a feeble little nag has foundered under too heavy a load and cannot move. The peasant beats it savagely, beats it at last, not knowing what he is doing in the intoxication of cruelty, thrashes it mercilessly over and over again. However weak you are, you must pull, if you die for it. The nag strains, and then he begins lashing the poor defenseless creature on its weeping, on its meek eyes. The frantic beast tugs and draws the load, trembling all over, gasping for breath, moving sideways with a sort of unnatural spasmodic action. It's awful in Nekrasov, but that's only a horse, and God has given horses to be beaten. So the Tatars have taught us, and they left us the knout as a remembrance of it. But men, too, can be beaten. A well-educated, cultured gentleman and his wife beat their own child with a birch rod, a girl of 7. I have an exact account of it. The papa was glad that the birch was covered with twigs. "It stings more," said he, and so he began stinging his daughter. I know for a fact there are people who at every blow are worked up to sensuality, to literal sensuality, which increases progressively at every blow they inflict. They beat for a minute, for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, more often and more savagely. The child screams. At last the child cannot scream. It gasps, "Daddy! Daddy!" By some diabolical, unseemly chance, the case was brought into court. A counsel is engaged. The Russian people have long called a barrister a conscience for hire. The counsel protests in his client's defense. "It's such a simple thing," he says, "an everyday domestic event. A father corrects his child. To our shame be it said, it is brought into court." The jury, convinced by him, give a favorable verdict. The public roars with delight that the torturer is acquitted. Ah, pity I wasn't there. I would have proposed to raise a subscription in his honor. Charming pictures. But I've still better things about children. I've collected a great deal about Russian children, Alyosha. There was a little girl of 5 who was hated by her father and mother, most worthy and respectable people, of good education and breeding. You see, I must repeat again, it is a peculiar characteristic of many people, this love of torturing children, and children only. To all other types of humanity, these torturers behave mildly and benevolently, like cultivated and humane Europeans. But they are very fond of tormenting children, even fond of children themselves in that sense. It's just their defenselessness that tempts the tormentor, just the angelic confidence of the child who has no refuge and no appeal that sets his vile blood on fire. In every man, of course, a demon lies hidden. The demon of rage, the demon of lustful heat at the screams of the tortured victim, the demon of lawlessness let off the chain, the demon of diseases that follow on vice, gout, kidney disease, and so on. This poor child of 5 was subjected to every possible torture by those cultivated parents. They beat her, thrashed her, kicked her for no reason till her body was one bruise. Then they went to greater refinements of cruelty, shut her up all night in the cold and frost in a privy, and because she didn't ask to be taken up at night, as though a child of 5 sleeping its angelic sound sleep could be trained to wake and ask, they smeared her face and filled her mouth with excrement, and it was her mother. Her mother did this. And that mother could sleep, hearing the poor child's groans. Can you understand why a little creature who can't even understand what's done to her should beat her little aching heart with her tiny fist in the dark and the cold, and weep her meek, unresentful tears to dear, kind God to protect her? Do you understand that, friend and brother, you pious and humble novice? Do you understand why this infamy must be and is permitted? Without it, I am told, man could not have existed on earth, for he could not have known good and evil. Why should he know that diabolical good and evil when it costs so much? Why the whole world of knowledge is not worth that child's prayer to dear, kind God? I say nothing of the sufferings of grown-up people. They have eaten the apple, damn them, and the devil take them all. But these little ones, I am making you suffer, Alyosha. You are not yourself. I'll leave off if you like. Never mind, I want to suffer too, muttered Alyosha. One picture, only one more, because it's so curious, so characteristic, and I have only just read it in some collection of Russian antiquities. I've forgotten the name. I must look it up. It was in the darkest days of serfdom at the beginning of the century, and long live the liberator of the people. There was in those days a general of aristocratic connections, the owner of great estates, one of those men, somewhat exceptional, I believe, even then, who, retiring from the service into a life of leisure, are convinced that they've earned absolute power over the lives of their subjects. There were such men then. So our general, settled on his property of 2,000 souls, lives in pomp and domineers over his poor neighbours as though they were dependents and buffoons. He has kennels of hundreds of hounds and nearly 100 dog boys, all mounted and in uniform. One day a serf boy, a little child of 8, threw a stone in play and hurt the paw of the general's favourite hound. Why is my favourite dog lame? He is told that the boy threw a stone that hurt the dog's paw. So you did it. The general looked the child up and down. Take him. He was taken from his mother and kept shut up all night. Early that morning the general comes out on horseback, with the hounds, his dependents, dog boys, and huntsmen, all mounted around him in full hunting parade. The servants are summoned for their edification, and in front of them all stands the mother of the child. The child is brought from the lockup. It's a gloomy, cold, foggy autumn day, a capital day for hunting. The general orders the child to be undressed. The child is stripped naked. He shivers, numb with terror, not daring to cry. "Make him run," commands the general. "Run! Run!" shout the dog boys. The boy runs. "At him!" yells the general, and he sets the whole pack of hounds on the child. The hounds catch him and tear him to pieces before his mother's eyes. I believe the general was afterwards declared incapable of administering his estates. Well, what did he deserve? To be shot. To be shot for the satisfaction of our moral feelings. Speak, Alyosha. To be shot, murmured Alyosha, lifting his eyes to Ivan with a pale, twisted smile. Bravo! Cried Ivan, delighted. If even you say so. You're a pretty monk. So there is a little devil sitting in your heart, Aliosha Karamazov? What I said was absurd, but... That's just the point. That but, cried Ivan. Let me tell you, novice, that the absurd is only too necessary on earth. The world stands on absurdities, and perhaps nothing would have come to pass in it without them. We know what we know. What do you know? I understand nothing, Ivan went on, as though in delirium. I don't want to understand anything now. I want to stick to the fact. I made up my mind long ago not to understand. If I try to understand anything, I shall be false to the fact, and I have determined to stick to the fact. Why are you trying me? Alyosha cried, with sudden distress. Will you say what you mean at last? Of course I will. That's what I've been leading up to. You're dear to me. I don't want to let you go, and I won't give you up to your Zosima. Ivan for a minute was silent. His face became all at once very sad. Listen, I took the case of children only to make my case clearer. Of the other tears of humanity with which the earth is soaked from its crust to its center, I will say nothing. I have narrowed my subject on purpose. I am a bug, and I recognize in all humility that I cannot understand why the world is arranged as it is. Men are themselves to blame, I suppose. They were given paradise, they wanted freedom, and stole fire from heaven, though they knew they would become unhappy, so there is no need to pity them. With my pitiful, earthly, Euclidean understanding, all I know is that there is suffering, and that there are none guilty. That cause follows effect, simply and directly, that everything flows and finds its level. But that's only Euclidean nonsense. I know that, and I can't consent to live by it. What comfort is it to me that there are none guilty, and that cause follows effect simply and directly, and that I know it? I must have justice, or I will destroy myself. And not justice in some remote infinite time and space, but here on earth, and that I could see myself. I have believed in it. I want to see it. And if I am dead by then, let me rise again. For if it all happens without me, it will be too unfair. Surely I haven't suffered, simply that I, my crimes and my sufferings, may manure the soil of the future harmony for somebody else. I want to see with my own eyes the hind lie down with the lion, and the victim rise up and embrace his murderer. I want to be there when everyone suddenly understands what it has all been for. All the religions of the world are built on this longing, and I am a believer. But then there are the children, and what am I to do about them? That's a question I can't answer. For the 100th time, I repeat, there are numbers of questions, but I've only taken the children, because in their case, what I mean is so unanswerably clear. Listen, if all must suffer to pay for the eternal harmony, what have children to do with it? Tell me, please. It's beyond all comprehension why they should suffer, and why they should pay for the harmony. Why should they, too, furnish material to enrich the soil for the harmony of the future? I understand solidarity in sin among men. I understand solidarity in retribution too, but there can be no such solidarity with children. And if it is really true that they must share responsibility for all their father's crimes, such a truth is not of this world and is beyond my comprehension. Some jester will say, perhaps, that the child would have grown up and have sinned, but you see, he didn't grow up. He was torn to pieces by the dogs at 8 years old. Oh, Alyosha, I am not blaspheming. I understand, of course, what an upheaval of the universe it will be, when everything in heaven and earth blends in one hymn of praise, and everything that lives and has lived cries aloud, Thou art just, O Lord, for thy ways are revealed. When the mother embraces the fiend who threw her child to the dogs, and all three cry aloud with tears, Thou art just, O Lord. Then, of course, the crown of knowledge will be reached, and all will be made clear. But what pulls me up here is that I can't accept that harmony. And while I am on earth, I make haste to take my own measures. You see, Alyosha, perhaps it really may happen that if I live to that moment, or rise again to see it, I too, perhaps, may cry aloud with the rest, looking at the mother embracing the child's torturer. Thou art just, O Lord. But I don't want to cry aloud then. While there is still time, I hasten to protect myself, and so I renounce the higher harmony altogether. It's not worth the tears of that one tortured child who beat itself on the breast with its little fist and prayed in its stinking outhouse with its unexpiated tears to dear kind God. It's not worth it, because those tears are unatoned for. They must be atoned for, or there can be no harmony. But how? How are you going to atone for them? Is it possible? By their being avenged? But what do I care for avenging them? What do I care for a hell for oppressors? What good can hell do, since those children have already been tortured? And what becomes of harmony if there is hell? I want to forgive. I want to embrace. I don't want more suffering. And if the sufferings of children go to swell the sum of sufferings which was necessary to pay for truth, then I protest that the truth is not worth such a price. I don't want the mother to embrace the oppressor who threw her son to the dogs. She dare not forgive him. Let her forgive him for herself, if she will. Let her forgive the torturer for the immeasurable suffering of her mother's heart. But the sufferings of her tortured child she has no right to forgive. She dare not forgive the torturer, even if the child were to forgive him. And if that is so, if they dare not forgive, what becomes of harmony? Is there in the whole world a being who would have the right to forgive and could forgive? I don't want harmony. From love for humanity, I don't want it. I would rather be left with the unavenged suffering. I would rather remain with my unavenged suffering and unsatisfied indignation, even if I were wrong. Besides, too high a price is asked for harmony. It's beyond our means to pay so much to enter on it. And so I hasten to give back my entrance ticket. And if I am an honest man, I am bound to give it back as soon as possible, and that I am doing. It's not God that I don't accept Alyosha, only I most respectfully return him the ticket. That's rebellion, murmured Alyosha, looking down. Rebellion? I am sorry you call it that, said Ivan earnestly. One can hardly live in rebellion, and I want to live. Tell me yourself, I challenge you. Answer. Imagine that you are creating a fabric of human destiny with the object of making men happy in the end, giving them peace and rest at last, but that it was essential and inevitable to torture to death only one tiny creature. That baby beating its breast with its fist, for instance, and to found that edifice on its unavenged tears, would you consent to be the architect on those conditions? Tell me, and tell the truth. No, I wouldn't consent, said Alyosha softly. And can you admit the idea that men for whom you are building it would agree to accept their happiness on the foundation of the unexpiated blood of a little victim? And accepting it would remain happy forever? No, I can't admit it. Brother, said Alyosha suddenly, with flashing eyes, you said just now, is there a being in the whole world who would have the right to forgive and could forgive? But there is a being, and he can forgive everything, all and for all, because he gave his innocent blood for all and everything. You have forgotten him, and on him is built the edifice, and it is to him they cry aloud, Thou art just, O Lord, for thy ways are revealed. Ah, the one without sin and his blood. No, I have not forgotten him. On the contrary, I've been wondering all the time how it was you did not bring him in before, for usually all arguments on your side put him in the foreground. Do you know, Alyosha? Don't laugh. I made a poem about a year ago. If you can waste another 10 minutes on me, I'll tell it to you. You wrote a poem? Oh no, I didn't write it, laughed Ivan, and I've never written 2 lines of poetry in my life. But I made up this poem in prose, and I remembered it. I was carried away when I made it up. You will be my first reader, that is, listener. Why should an author forego even one listener? Smiled Ivan. Shall I tell it to you? I am all attention, said Alyosha. My poem is called The Grand Inquisitor. It's a ridiculous thing, but I want to tell it to you. Chapter 5. The Grand Inquisitor. Even this must have a preface. That is, a literary preface, laughed Ivan, and I am a poor hand at making one. You see, my action takes place in the 16th century, and at that time, as you probably learnt at school, it was customary in poetry to bring down heavenly powers on earth. Not to speak of Dante, in France, clerks, as well as the monks in the monasteries, used to give regular performances in which the Madonna, the saints, the angels, Christ, and God himself were brought on the stage. In those days it was done in all simplicity. In Victor Hugo's Notre Dame de Paris, an edifying and gratuitous spectacle was provided for the people in the Hôtel de Ville of Paris in the reign of Louis XI in honor of the birth of the Dauphin. It was called Le Bon Jugement de la Très Sainte et Gracieuse Vierge Marie, and she appears herself on the stage and pronounces her bon jugement. Similar plays, chiefly from the Old Testament, were occasionally performed in Moscow too, up to the times of Peter the Great. But besides plays, there were all sorts of legends and ballads scattered about the world, in which the saints and angels and all the powers of heaven took part when required. In our monasteries, the monks busied themselves in translating, copying, and even composing such poems, and even under the Tatars. There is, for instance, one such poem, of course, from the Greek, The Wanderings of Our Lady Through Hell, with descriptions as bold as Dante's. Our Lady visits hell, and the Archangel Michael leads her through the torments. She sees the sinners and their punishment. There she sees, among others, one noteworthy set of sinners in a burning lake. Some of them sink to the bottom of the lake so that they can't swim out, and these God forgets, an expression of extraordinary depth and force. And so Our Lady, shocked and weeping, falls before the throne of God and begs for mercy for all in hell, for all she has seen there, indiscriminately. Her conversation with God is immensely interesting. She beseeches him, she will not desist, and when God points to the hands and feet of her son, nailed to the cross, and asks, "How can I forgive his tormentors?" she bids all the saints, all the martyrs, all the angels and archangels to fall down with her and pray for mercy on all without distinction. It ends by her winning from God a respite of suffering every year from Good Friday till Trinity Day, and the sinners at once raise a cry of thankfulness from hell, chanting, "Thou art just, O Lord, in this judgment." Well, my poem would have been of that kind if it had appeared at that time. He comes on the scene in my poem, but he says nothing, only appears and passes on. 15 centuries have passed since he promised to come in his glory, 15 centuries since his prophet wrote, "Behold, I come quickly. Of that day and that hour knoweth no man, neither the Son, but the Father, as he himself predicted on earth." But humanity awaits him with the same faith and with the same love. Oh, with greater faith, for it is 15 centuries since man has ceased to see signs from heaven. No signs from heaven come today, to add to what the heart doth say. There was nothing left but faith in what the heart doth say. It is true there were many miracles in those days. There were saints who performed miraculous cures. Some holy people, according to their biographies, were visited by the Queen of Heaven herself. But the devil did not slumber, and doubts were already arising among men of the truth of these miracles. And just then there appeared in the north of Germany a terrible new heresy. A huge star, like to a torch, that is, to a church, fell on the sources of the waters, and they became bitter. These heretics began blasphemously denying miracles. But those who remained faithful were all the more ardent in their faith. The tears of humanity rose up to him as before, awaited his coming, loved him, hoped for him, yearned to suffer and die for him as before. And so many ages mankind had prayed with faith and fervor, "O Lord our God, hasten thy coming." So many ages called upon him, that in his infinite mercy he deigned to come down to his servants. Before that day he had come down. He had visited some holy men, martyrs, and hermits, as is written in their lives. Among us, Tyuchov, with absolute faith in the truth of his words, bore witness that, bearing the cross, in slavish dress, weary and worn, the heavenly king, our mother, Russia, came to bless, and through our land went wandering. And that certainly was so, I assure you. And behold, he deigned to appear for a moment to the people, to the tortured, suffering people, sunk in iniquity, but loving him like children. My story is laid in Spain, in Seville, in the most terrible time of the Inquisition, when fires were lighted every day to the glory of God, and in the splendid auto da fe the wicked heretics were burnt. Oh, of course, this was not the coming in which he will appear according to his promise at the end of time, in all his heavenly glory, and which will be sudden as lightning flashing from east to west. No, he visited his children only for a moment, and there where the flames were crackling round the heretics. In his infinite mercy, he came once more among men in that human shape in which he walked among men for 3 years, 15 centuries ago. He came down to the hot pavements of the southern town, in which on the day before almost 100 heretics had, at Majorum Gloriam Dei, been burnt by the cardinal, the Grand Inquisitor, in a magnificent auto da fe, in the presence of the king, the court, the knights, the cardinals, the most charming ladies of the court, and the whole population of Seville. He came softly, unobserved, and yet, strange to say, everyone recognized him. That might be one of the best passages in the poem. I mean, why they recognized him. The people are irresistibly drawn to him. They surround him, they flock about him, follow him. He moves silently in their midst with a gentle smile of infinite compassion. The sun of love burns in his heart, light and power shine from his eyes, and their radiance, shed on the people, stirs their hearts with responsive love. He holds out his hands to them, blesses them, and a healing virtue comes from contact with him even with his garments. An old man in the crowd, blind from childhood, cries out, "O Lord, heal me, and I shall see thee." And as it were, scales fall from his eyes, and the blind man sees him. The crowd weeps and kisses the earth under his feet. Children throw flowers before him, sing and cry Hosanna. "It is he, it is he," all repeat. It must be he. It can be no one but him. He stops at the steps of the Seville Cathedral at the moment when the weeping mourners are bringing in a little open white coffin. In it lies a child of 7, the only daughter of a prominent citizen. The dead child lies hidden in flowers. "He will raise your child," the crowd shouts to the weeping mother. The priest, coming to meet the coffin, looks perplexed and frowns, but the mother of the dead child throws herself at his feet with a wail. "If it is thou, raise my child," she cries, holding out her hands to him. The procession halts. The coffin is laid on the steps at his feet. He looks with compassion, and his lips once more softly pronounce, "Maiden, arise." And the maiden arises. The little girl sits up in the coffin and looks round, smiling with wide, open, wondering eyes, holding a bunch of white roses they had put in her hand. There are cries, sobs, confusion among the people, and at that moment the cardinal himself, the Grand Inquisitor, passes by the cathedral. He is an old man, almost 90, tall and erect, with a withered face and sunken eyes, in which there is still a gleam of light. He is not dressed in his gorgeous cardinal's robes, as he was the day before, when he was burning the enemies of the Roman Church. At this moment he is wearing his coarse, old monk's cassock. At a distance behind him come his gloomy assistants and slaves and the holy guard. He stops at the sight of the crowd and watches it from a distance. He sees everything. He sees them set the coffin down at his feet, sees the child rise up, and his face darkens. He knits his thick grey brows, and his eyes gleam with a sinister fire. He holds out his finger and bids the guards take him. And such is his power, so completely are the people cowed into submission and trembling obedience to him, that the crowd immediately makes way for the guards, and in the midst of death-like silence they lay hands on him and lead him away. The crowd instantly bows down to the earth, like one man, before the old Inquisitor. He blesses the people in silence and passes on. The guards lead their prisoner to the close, gloomy, vaulted prison in the ancient palace of the Holy Inquisition and shut him in it. The day passes and is followed by the dark, burning, breathless night of Seville. The air is fragrant with laurel and lemon. In the pitch darkness, the iron door of the prison is suddenly opened, and the Grand Inquisitor himself comes in with a light in his hand. He is alone. The door is closed at once behind him. He stands in the doorway and for a minute or two gazes into his face. At last he goes up slowly, sets the light on the table and speaks. "Is it thou? Thou?" But receiving no answer, he adds at once, "Don't answer. Be silent. What canst thou say indeed? I know too well what thou wouldst say, and thou hast no right to add anything to what thou hadst said of old. Why, then, art thou come to hinder us? For thou hast come to hinder us, and thou knowest that. But dost thou know what will be tomorrow? I know not who thou art, and care not to know whether it is thou, or only a semblance of him. But tomorrow I shall condemn thee and burn thee at the stake as the worst of heretics. And the very people who have today kissed thy feet, tomorrow at the faintest sign from me, will rush to heap up the embers of thy fire. Knowest thou that? Yes, maybe thou knowest it," he added with thoughtful penetration, never for a moment taking his eyes off the prisoner. "I don't quite understand, Ivan. What does it mean?" Alyosha, who had been listening in silence, said with a smile, "Is it simply a wild fantasy, or a mistake on the part of the old man? Some impossible quiproquo?" "Take it as the last," said Ivan, laughing. "If you are so corrupted by modern realism and can't stand anything fantastic, if you like it to be a case of mistaken identity, let it be so. It is true," he went on, laughing, "the old man was 90, and he might well be crazy over his set idea. He might have been struck by the appearance of the prisoner. It might, in fact, be simply his ravings, The delusion of an old man of 90, overexcited by the auto-da-fe of 100 heretics the day before. But does it matter to us, after all, whether it was a mistake of identity or a wild fantasy? All that matters is that the old man should speak out, should speak openly of what he has thought in silence for 90 years. And the prisoner too is silent. Does he look at him and not say a word? That's inevitable in any case, Ivan laughed again. The old man has told him he hasn't the right to add anything to what he has said of old. One may say it is the most fundamental feature of Roman Catholicism, in my opinion at least. All has been given by thee to the Pope, they say, and all therefore is still in the Pope's hands, and there is no need for thee to come now at all. Thou must not meddle for the time, at least. That's how they speak and write too. The Jesuits, at any rate. I have read it myself in the works of their theologians. Hast thou the right to reveal to us one of the mysteries of that world from which thou hast come? My old man asks him, and answers the question for him. No, thou hast not, that thou mayest not add to what has been said of old, and mayest not take from men the freedom which thou didst exalt when thou wast on earth. Whatsoever thou revealest anew will encroach on men's freedom of faith, for it will be manifest as a miracle, and the freedom of their faith was dearer to thee than anything in those days 1500 years ago. Didst thou not often say then, I will make you free? But now thou hast seen these free men. The old man adds suddenly, with a pensive smile. Yes, we've paid dearly for it, he goes on, looking sternly at him. But at last we have completed that work in thy name. For 15 centuries we have been wrestling with thy freedom, but now it is ended and over for good. Dost thou not believe that it's over for good? Thou lookest meekly at me, and deignest not even to be wroth with me. But let me tell thee that now, today, people are more persuaded than ever that they have perfect freedom, yet they have brought their freedom to us and laid it humbly at our feet. But that has been our doing. Was this what thou didst? Was this thy freedom? I don't understand again, Alyosha broke in. Is he ironical? Is he jesting? Not a bit of it. He claims it as a merit for himself and his church that at last they have vanquished freedom and have done so to make men happy. For now, he is speaking of the Inquisition, of course. For the first time, it has become possible to think of the happiness of men. Man was created a rebel, and how can rebels be happy? Thou wast warned, he says to him. Thou hast had no lack of admonitions and warnings, but thou didst not listen to those warnings. Thou didst reject the only way by which men might be made happy. But fortunately, departing, thou didst hand on the work to us. Thou hast promised, thou hast established by thy word, thou hast given to us the right to bind and to unbind, and now, of course, thou canst not think of taking it away. Why, then, hast thou come to hinder us? And what's the meaning of no lack of admonitions and warnings? Asked Alyosha. Why, that's the chief part of what the old man must say. The wise and dread spirit, the spirit of self-destruction and non-existence, the old man goes on. The great spirit talked with thee in the wilderness, and we are told in the books that he tempted thee. Is that so? And could anything truer be said than what he revealed to thee in 3 questions, and what thou didst reject, and what in the books is called the temptation? And yet, if there has ever been on earth a real stupendous miracle, it took place on that day, on the day of the 3 temptations. The statement of those 3 questions was itself the miracle. If it were possible to imagine, simply for the sake of argument, that those 3 questions of the dread spirit had perished utterly from the books, and that we had to restore them and to invent them anew, and to do so had gathered together all the wise men of the earth, rulers, chief priests, learned men, philosophers, poets, and had set them the task to invent 3 questions, such as would not only fit the occasion, but express in 3 words, 3 human phrases, the whole future history of the world and of humanity. Dost thou believe that all the wisdom of the earth united could have invented anything in depth and force equal to the 3 questions which were actually put to thee then by the wise and mighty spirit in the wilderness? From those questions alone, from the miracle of their statement, we can see that we have here to do not with the fleeting human intelligence, but with the absolute and eternal. For in those three questions, the whole subsequent history of mankind is, as it were, brought together into one whole and foretold, and in them are united all the unsolved historical contradictions of human nature. At the time it could not be so clear, since the future was unknown, but now that 1500 years have passed, we see that everything in those three questions was so justly divined and foretold, and has been so truly fulfilled, that nothing can be added to them or taken from them. Judge thyself who was right, thou or he who questioned thee then. Remember the first question. Its meaning, in other words, was this: thou wouldst go into the world, and art going with empty hands, with some promise of freedom which men in their simplicity and their natural unruliness cannot even understand, which they fear and dread. For nothing has ever been more insupportable for a man and a human society than freedom. But seest thou these stones in this parched and barren wilderness? Turn them into bread, and mankind will run after thee like a flock of sheep, grateful and obedient, though forever trembling, lest thou withdraw thy hand and deny them thy bread. But thou wouldst not deprive man of freedom, and didst reject the offer, thinking, what is that freedom worth, if obedience is bought with bread? Thou didst reply that man lives not by bread alone. But dost thou know that for the sake of that earthly bread, the spirit of the earth will rise up against thee, and will strive with thee and overcome thee, and all will follow him, crying, who can compare with this beast? He has given us fire from heaven. Dost thou know that the ages will pass, and humanity will proclaim by the lips of their sages that there is no crime, and therefore no sin, there is only hunger? Feed men, and then ask of them virtue. That's what they'll write on the banner, which they will raise against thee, and with which they will destroy thy temple. Where thy temple stood will rise a new building. The terrible Tower of Babel will be built again, and though, like the one of old, it will not be finished, yet thou mightest have prevented that new tower, and have cut short the sufferings of men for 1,000 years, for they will come back to us after 1,000 years of agony with their tower. They will seek us again, hidden underground in the catacombs, for we shall be again persecuted and tortured. They will find us and cry to us, feed us, for those who have promised us fire from heaven haven't given it. And then we shall finish building their tower, for he finishes the building who feeds them. And we alone shall feed them in thy name, declaring falsely that it is in thy name. Oh, never, never can they feed themselves without us. No science will give them bread so long as they remain free. In the end, they will lay their freedom at our feet and say to us, make us your slaves, but feed us. They will understand themselves, at last, that freedom and bread enough for all are inconceivable together, for never, never will they be able to share between them. They will be convinced, too, that they can never be free, for they are weak, vicious, worthless, and rebellious. Thou didst promise them the bread of heaven, but I repeat again, can it compare with earthly bread in the eyes of the weak, ever sinful and ignoble race of man? And if for the sake of the bread of heaven thousands shall follow thee, what is to become of the millions and tens of thousands of millions of creatures who will not have the strength to forgo the earthly bread for the sake of the heavenly? Or dost thou care only for the tens of thousands of the great and strong, while the millions, numerous as the sands of the sea, who are weak but love thee, must exist only for the sake of the great and strong? No, we care for the weak too. They are sinful and rebellious, but in the end they too will become obedient. They will marvel at us and look on us as gods, because we are ready to endure the freedom which they have found so dreadful, and to rule over them. So awful it will seem to them to be free. But we shall tell them that we are thy servants, and rule them in thy name. We shall deceive them again, for we will not let thee come to us again. That deception will be our suffering, for we shall be forced to lie. This is the significance of the first question in the wilderness, and this is what thou hast rejected for the sake of that freedom which thou hast exalted above everything. Yet in this question lies hid the great secret of this world. Choosing bread, thou wouldst have satisfied the universal and everlasting craving of humanity, to find someone to worship. So long as man remains free, he strives for nothing so incessantly and so painfully as to find someone to worship. But man seeks to worship what is established beyond dispute, so that all men would agree at once to worship it. For these pitiful creatures are concerned not only to find what one or the other can worship, but to find something that all would believe in and worship. What is essential is that all may be together in it. This craving for community of worship is the chief misery of every man individually and of all humanity from the beginning of time. For the sake of common worship, they've slain each other with the sword. They have set up gods and challenged one another. Put away your gods and come and worship ours, or we will kill you and your gods. And so it will be to the end of the world, even when gods disappear from the earth. They will fall down before idols just the same. Thou didst know, thou couldst not but have known, this fundamental secret of human nature. But thou didst reject the one infallible banner which was offered thee to make all men bow down to thee alone, the banner of earthly bread, and thou hast rejected it for the sake of freedom and the bread of heaven. Behold what thou didst further, and all again in the name of freedom. I tell thee that man is tormented by no greater anxiety than to find someone quickly to whom he can hand over that gift of freedom with which the ill-fated creature is born. But only one who can appease their conscience can take over their freedom. In bread there was offered thee an invincible banner. Give bread, and man will worship thee, for nothing is more certain than bread. But if someone else gains possession of his conscience, oh, then he will cast away thy bread and follow after him who has ensnared his conscience. In that thou wast right. For the secret of man's being is not only to live, but to have something to live for. Without a stable conception of the object of life, man would not consent to go on living, and would rather destroy himself than remain on earth, though he had bread in abundance. That is true. But what happened? Instead of taking men's freedom from them, thou didst make it greater than ever. Didst thou forget that man prefers peace, and even death, to freedom of choice in the knowledge of good and evil? Nothing is more seductive for man than his freedom of conscience, but nothing is a greater cause of suffering. And behold, instead of giving a firm foundation for setting the conscience of man at rest forever, thou didst choose all that is exceptional, vague, and enigmatic. Thou didst choose what was utterly beyond the strength of men, acting as though thou didst not love them at all, thou who didst come to give thy life for them. Instead of taking possession of men's freedom, thou didst increase it, and burden the spiritual kingdom of mankind with its sufferings forever. Thou didst desire man's free love, that he should follow thee freely, enticed and taken captive by thee. In place of the rigid ancient law, man must hereafter with free heart decide for himself what is good and what is evil, having only thy image before him as his guide. But didst thou not know that he would at last reject even thy image and thy truth if he is weighed down with the fearful burden of free choice? They will cry aloud at last that the truth is not in thee, for they could not have been left in greater confusion and suffering than thou hast caused, laying upon them so many cares and unanswerable problems. So that, in truth, thou didst thyself lay the foundation for the destruction of thy kingdom, and no one is more to blame for it. Yet what was offered thee? There are three powers alone, able to conquer and to hold captive forever the conscience of these impotent rebels for their happiness. Those forces are miracle, mystery, and authority. Thou hast rejected all three, and hast set the example for doing so. When the wise and dread spirit set thee on the pinnacle of the temple, and said to thee, If thou wouldst know whether thou art the Son of God, then cast thyself down, for it is written, The angels shall hold him up, lest he fall and bruise himself. And thou shalt know then whether thou art the Son of God, and shalt prove then how great is thy faith in thy Father. But thou didst refuse, and wouldst not cast thyself down. Oh, of course, thou didst proudly and well, like God, but the weak, unruly race of men, are they gods? Oh, thou didst know then that in taking one step, in making one movement to cast thyself down, thou wouldst be tempting God, and have lost all thy faith in him, and wouldst have been dashed to pieces against that earth which thou didst come to save. and the wise spirit that tempted thee would have rejoiced. But I ask again, are there many like thee? And couldst thou believe for one moment that men, too, could face such a temptation? Is the nature of men such that they can reject miracle, and at the great moments of their life, the moments of their deepest, most agonizing spiritual difficulties, cling only to the free verdict of the heart? Oh, thou didst know that thy deed would be recorded in books, would be handed down to remote times and the utmost ends of the earth, and thou didst hope that man, following thee, would cling to God and not ask for a miracle. But thou didst not know that when man rejects miracle, he rejects God too. For man seeks not so much God as the miraculous. And as man cannot bear to be without the miraculous, he will create new miracles of his own for himself, and will worship deeds of sorcery and witchcraft, though he might be 100 times over a rebel, heretic, and infidel. Thou didst not come down from the cross when they shouted to thee, mocking and reviling thee, "Come down from the cross, and we will believe that thou art he." Thou didst not come down, for again thou wouldst not enslave man by a miracle, and didst crave faith given freely, not based on miracle. Thou didst crave for free love, and not the base raptures of the slave before the might that has overawed him forever. But thou didst think too highly of men therein, for they are slaves, of course, though rebellious by nature. Look round and judge. 15 centuries have passed. Look upon them. Whom hast thou raised up to thyself? I swear, man is weaker and baser by nature than thou hast believed him. Can he? Can he do what thou didst? By showing him so much respect, thou didst, as it were, cease to feel for him, for thou didst ask far too much from him, thou who hast loved him more than thyself. Respecting him less, thou wouldst have asked less of him. That would have been more like love, for his burden would have been lighter. He is weak and vile. What though he is everywhere now rebelling against our power and proud of his rebellion? It is the pride of a child and a schoolboy. They are little children rioting and barring out the teacher at school. But their childish delight will end. It will cost them dear. They will cast down temples and drench the earth with blood. But they will see at last, the foolish children, that though they are rebels, they are impotent rebels, unable to keep up their own rebellion. Bathed in their foolish tears, they will recognize at last that he who created them rebels must have meant to mock at them. They will say this in despair, and their utterance will be a blasphemy which will make them more unhappy still, for man's nature cannot bear blasphemy, and in the end always avenges it on itself. And so unrest, confusion, and unhappiness, that is the present lot of man, after thou didst bear so much for their freedom. The great prophet tells in vision and in image that he saw all those who took part in the first resurrection, and that there were of each tribe 12,000. But if there were so many of them, they must have been not men but gods. They had borne thy cross. They had endured scores of years in the barren, hungry wilderness, living upon locusts and roots. And thou mayest indeed point with pride at those children of freedom, of free love, of free and splendid sacrifice for thy name. But remember that they were only some thousands, and what of the rest? And how are the other weak ones to blame, because they could not endure what the strong have endured? How is the weak soul to blame that it is unable to receive such terrible gifts? Canst thou have simply come to the elect and for the elect? But if so, it is a mystery, and we cannot understand it. And if it is a mystery, we too have a right to preach a mystery, and to teach them that it's not the free judgment of their hearts, not love that matters, but a mystery which they must follow blindly, even against their conscience. So we have done. We have corrected thy work, and have founded it upon miracle, mystery, and authority. And men rejoiced that they were again led like sheep, and that the terrible gift that had brought them such suffering was, at last, lifted from their hearts. Were we right teaching them this? Speak. Did we not love mankind, so meekly acknowledging their feebleness, lovingly lightening their burden, and permitting their weak nature even sin with our sanction? Why hast thou come now to hinder us? And why dost thou look silently and searchingly at me with thy mild eyes? Be angry. I don't want thy love, for I love thee not. And what use is it for me to hide anything from thee? Don't I know to whom I am speaking? All that I can say is known to thee already. And is it for me to conceal from thee our mystery? Perhaps it is thy will to hear it from my lips. Listen then. We are not working with thee, but with him. That is our mystery. It's long, 8 centuries, since we have been on his side, and not on thine. Just 8 centuries ago, we took from him what thou didst reject with scorn, that last gift he offered thee, showing thee all the kingdoms of the earth. We took from him Rome and the sword of Caesar, and proclaimed ourselves sole rulers of the earth, though hitherto we have not been able to complete our work. But whose fault is that? Oh, the work is only beginning. But it has begun. It has long to await completion, and the earth has yet much to suffer. But we shall triumph, and shall be Caesars, and then we shall plan the universal happiness of man. But thou mightest have taken even then the sword of Caesar. Why didst thou reject that last gift? Hadst thou accepted that last counsel of the mighty spirit, thou wouldst have accomplished all that man seeks on earth. That is, someone to worship, someone to keep his conscience, and some means of uniting all in one unanimous and harmonious ant-heap, for the craving for universal unity is the third and last anguish of men. Mankind as a whole has always striven to organize a universal state. There have been many great nations with great histories, but the more highly they were developed, the more unhappy they were, for they felt more acutely than other people the craving for worldwide union. The great conquerors, Timurs and Genghis Khans, whirled like hurricanes over the face of the earth, striving to subdue its people, and they too were but the unconscious expression of the same craving for universal unity. Hadst thou taken the world and Caesar's purple, thou wouldst have founded the universal state and have given universal peace. For who can rule men if not he who holds their conscience and their bread in his hands? We have taken the sword of Caesar, and in taking it, of course, have rejected thee and followed him. Oh, ages are yet to come of the confusion of free thought, of their science and cannibalism. For having begun to build their Tower of Babel without us, they will end, of course, with cannibalism. But then the beast will crawl to us and lick our feet and spatter them with tears of blood, and we shall sit upon the beast and raise the cup, and on it will be written, Mystery. But then, and only then, the reign of peace and happiness will come for men. Thou art proud of thine elect, but thou hast only the elect, while we give rest to all. And besides, how many of those elect, those mighty ones who could become elect, have grown weary waiting for thee, and have transferred and will transfer the powers of their spirit and the warmth of their heart to the other camp, and end by raising their free banner against thee. Thou didst thyself lift up that banner, but with us all will be happy, and will no more rebel, nor destroy one another as under thy freedom. Oh, we shall persuade them that they will only become free when they renounce their freedom to us and submit to us. And shall we be right, or shall we be lying? They will be convinced that we are right, for they will remember the horrors of slavery and confusion to which thy freedom brought them. Freedom, free thought and science will lead them into such straits, and will bring them face to face with such marvels and insoluble mysteries, that some of them, the fierce and rebellious, will destroy themselves. Others, rebellious but weak, will destroy one another, while the rest, weak and unhappy, will crawl, fawning to our feet and whine to us. Yes, you were right. You alone possess his mystery, and we come back to you. Save us from ourselves. Receiving bread from us, they will see clearly that we take the bread made by their hands from them to give it to them without any miracle. They will see that we do not change the stones to bread, but in truth they will be more thankful for taking it from our hands than for the bread itself. For they will remember only too well that in old days, without our help, even the bread they made turned to stones in their hands, while since they have come back to us, the very stones have turned to bread in their hands. Too well will they know the value of complete submission, and until men know that, they will be unhappy. Who is most to blame for their not knowing it? Speak. Who scattered the flock and sent it astray on unknown paths? But the flock will come together again, and will submit once more, and then it will be once for all. Then we shall give them the quiet, humble happiness of weak creatures, such as they are by nature. Oh, we shall persuade them at last not to be proud, for thou didst lift them up, and thereby taught them to be proud. We shall show them that they are weak, that they are only pitiful children, but that childlike happiness is the sweetest of all. They will become timid and will look to us and huddle close to us in fear, as chicks to the hen. They will marvel at us and will be awe-stricken before us, and will be proud at our being so powerful and clever that we have been able to subdue such a turbulent flock of thousands of millions. They will tremble impotently before our wrath. Their minds will grow fearful. They will be quick to shed tears like women and children, but they will be just as ready at a sign from us to pass to laughter and rejoicing, to happy mirth and childish song. Yes, we shall set them to work, but in their leisure hours we shall make their life like a child's game, with children's songs and innocent dance. Oh, we shall allow them even sin. They are weak and helpless, and they will love us like children because we allow them to sin. We shall tell them that every sin will be expiated if it is done with our permission, that we allow them to sin because we love them, and the punishment for these sins we take upon ourselves. And we shall take it upon ourselves, and they will adore us as their saviours who have taken on themselves their sins before God, and they will have no secrets from us. We shall allow or forbid them to live with their wives and mistresses, to have or not to have children, according to whether they have been obedient or disobedient, and they will submit to us gladly and cheerfully. The most painful secrets of their conscience, all they will bring to us, and we shall have an answer for all, and they will be glad to believe our answer, for it will save them from the great anxiety and terrible agony they endure at present in making a free decision for themselves, and all will be happy, all the millions of creatures except the 100,000 who rule over them. For only we who guard the mystery, shall be unhappy. There will be thousands of millions of happy babes, and 100,000 sufferers who have taken upon themselves the curse of the knowledge of good and evil. Peacefully they will die, peacefully they will expire in thy name, and beyond the grave they will find nothing but death. But we shall keep the secret, and for their happiness we shall allure them with the reward of heaven and eternity, though if there were anything in the other world, it certainly would not be for such as they. It is prophesied that thou wilt come again in victory. Thou wilt come with thy chosen, the proud and strong. But we will say that they have only saved themselves, but we have saved all. We are told that the harlot who sits upon the beast and holds in her hands the mystery shall be put to shame, that the weak will rise up again and will rend her royal purple and will strip naked her loathsome body. But then I will stand up and point out to thee the 1,000 millions of happy children who have known no sin. And we, who have taken their sins upon us for their happiness, will stand up before thee and say, Judge us if thou canst and darest. Know that I fear thee not. Know that I too have been in the wilderness. I too have lived on roots and locusts. I too prize the freedom with which thou hast blessed men. And I too was striving to stand among thy elect, among the strong and powerful, thirsting to make up the number. But I awakened and would not serve madness. I turned back and joined the ranks of those who have corrected thy work. I left the proud and went back to the humble for the happiness of the humble. What I say to thee will come to pass, and our dominion will be built up. I repeat, tomorrow thou shalt see that obedient flock who at a sign from me will hasten to heap up the hot cinders about the pile on which I shall burn thee for coming to hinder us. For if anyone has ever deserved our fires, it is thou. Tomorrow I shall burn thee. Dixie. Ivan stopped. He was carried away as he talked and spoke with excitement. When he had finished, he suddenly smiled. Alyosha had listened in silence. Towards the end, he was greatly moved and seemed several times on the point of interrupting, but restrained himself. Now his words came with a rush. But that's absurd, he cried, flushing. Your poem is in praise of Jesus, not in blame of him, as you meant it to be. And who will believe you about freedom? Is that the way to understand it? That's not the idea of it in the Orthodox Church. That's Rome, and not even the whole of Rome. It's false. Those are the worst of the Catholics, the Inquisitors, the Jesuits. And there could not be such a fantastic creature as your Inquisitor. What are these sins of mankind they take on themselves? Who are these keepers of the mystery who have taken some curse upon themselves for the happiness of mankind? When have they been seen? We know the Jesuits. They are spoken ill of, but surely they are not what you describe. They are not that at all, not at all. They are simply the Romish army for the earthly sovereignty of the world in the future, with the pontiff of Rome for emperor. That's their ideal, but there's no sort of mystery or lofty melancholy about it. It's simple lust of power, of filthy earthly gain, of domination, something like a universal serfdom with them as masters. That's all they stand for. They don't even believe in God, perhaps. Your suffering inquisitor is a mere fantasy. Stay, stay, laughed Ivan. How hot you are. A fantasy, you say, let it be so. Of course it's a fantasy. But allow me to say, do you really think that the Roman Catholic movement of the last centuries is actually nothing but the lust of power, of filthy earthly gain? Is that Father Pisces' teaching? No, no. On the contrary, Father Pisces did once say something rather the same as you, but of course it's not the same. Not a bit the same, Alyosha hastily corrected himself. A precious admission, in spite of your not a bit the same. I ask you why your Jesuits and Inquisitors have united simply for vile material gain. Why can there not be among them one martyr oppressed by great sorrow and loving humanity? You see, only suppose that there was one such man among all those who desire nothing but filthy material gain. If there's only one like my old Inquisitor, who had himself eaten roots in the desert and made frenzied efforts to subdue his flesh to make himself free and perfect. But yet, all his life he loved humanity, and suddenly his eyes were opened, and he saw that it is no great moral blessedness to attain perfection and freedom if at the same time one gains the conviction that millions of God's creatures have been created as a mockery, that they will never be capable of using their freedom, that these poor rebels can never turn into giants to complete the tower, that it was not for such geese that the great idealist dreamt his dream of harmony. Seeing all that, he turned back and joined the clever people. Surely that could have happened. Joined whom? What clever people? Cried Alyosha, completely carried away. They have no such great cleverness, and no mysteries and secrets. Perhaps nothing but atheism, that's all their secret. Your Inquisitor does not believe in God. That's his secret. What if it is so? At last you have guessed it. It's perfectly true. It's true that that's the whole secret. But isn't that suffering, at least for a man like that, who has wasted his whole life in the desert and yet could not shake off his incurable love of humanity? In his old age, he reached the clear conviction that nothing but the advice of the great dread spirit could build up any tolerable sort of life for the feeble, unruly, incomplete, empirical creatures created in jest. And so, convinced of this, he sees that he must follow the counsel of the wise spirit, the dread spirit of death and destruction, and therefore accept lying and deception, and lead men consciously to death and destruction, and yet deceive them all the way so that they may not notice where they are being led, that the poor blind creatures may at least on the way think themselves happy. And note, the deception is in the name of him in whose ideal the old man had so fervently believed all his life long. Is not that tragic? And if only one such stood at the head of the whole army, filled with the lust of power only for the sake of filthy gain, would not one such be enough to make a tragedy? More than that, one such standing at the head is enough to create the actual leading idea of the Roman Church, with all its armies and Jesuits, its highest idea. I tell you frankly that I firmly believe that there has always been such a man among those who stood at the head of the movement. Who knows, there may have been some such even among the Roman popes. Who knows, perhaps the spirit of that accursed old man who loves mankind so obstinately in his own way is to be found even now in a whole multitude of such old men, existing not by chance but by agreement, as a secret league formed long ago for the guarding of the mystery, to guard it from the weak and the unhappy, so as to make them happy. No doubt it is so, and so it must be indeed. I fancy that even among the Masons there's something of the same mystery at the bottom, and that's why the Catholics so detest the Masons, as their rivals, breaking up the unity of the idea, while it is so essential that there should be one flock and one shepherd. But from the way I defend my idea, I might be an author impatient of your criticism. Enough of it. You are perhaps a Mason yourself, broke suddenly from Alyosha. You don't believe in God, he added, speaking this time very sorrowfully. He fancied, besides, that his brother was looking at him ironically. How does your poem end? He asked, suddenly looking down. Or was it the end? I meant to end it like this. When the Inquisitor ceased speaking, he waited some time for his prisoner to answer him. His silence weighed down upon him. He saw that the prisoner had listened intently all the time, looking gently in his face and evidently not wishing to reply. The old man longed for him to say something, however bitter and terrible. But he suddenly approached the old man in silence and softly kissed him on his bloodless, aged lips. That was all his answer. The old man shuddered. His lips moved. He went to the door, opened it, and said to him, Go, and come no more. Come not at all. Never. Never. And he let him out into the dark alleys of the town. The prisoner went away. And the old man? The kiss glows in his heart, but the old man adheres to his idea. And you with him? You too? Cried Alyosha mournfully. Ivan laughed. Why, it's all nonsense, Alyosha. It's only a senseless poem of a senseless student who could never write 2 lines of verse. Why do you take it so seriously? Surely you don't suppose I am going straight off to the Jesuits to join the men who are correcting his work? Good Lord, it's no business of mine. I told you, all I want is to live on to 30, and then dash the cup to the ground. But the little sticky leaves, and the precious tombs, and the blue sky, and the woman you love. How will you live? How will you love them? Alyosha cried sorrowfully. With such a hell in your heart and your head, how can you? No, that's just what you are going away for, to join them. If not, you will kill yourself. You can't endure it. There is a strength to endure everything, Ivan said with a cold smile. What strength? The strength of the Karamazovs, the strength of the Karamazov baseness. To sink into debauchery, to stifle your soul with corruption, yes? Possibly even that. Only perhaps till I am 30 I shall escape it, and then, how will you escape it? By what will you escape it? That's impossible with your ideas. In the Karamazov way, again. Everything is lawful, you mean? Everything is lawful, is that it? Ivan scowled, and all at once turned strangely pale. Ah, you've caught up yesterday's phrase, which so offended Miosov, and which Dmitri pounced upon so naively and paraphrased. He smiled queerly. Yes, if you like, everything is lawful, since the word has been said. I won't deny it, and Mitya's version isn't bad. Alyosha looked at him in silence. I thought that going away from here I have you at least, Ivan said suddenly, with unexpected feeling. But now I see that there is no place for me even in your heart, my dear hermit. The formula, all is lawful, I won't renounce. Will you renounce me for that, yes? Alyosha got up, went to him, and softly kissed him on the lips. That's plagiarism, cried Ivan, highly delighted. You stole that from my poem. Thank you, though. Get up, Alyosha. It's time we were going, both of us. They went out, but stopped when they reached the entrance of the restaurant. Listen, Alyosha, Ivan began in a resolute voice. If I am really able to care for the sticky little leaves, I shall only love them, remembering you. It's enough for me that you are somewhere here, and I shan't lose my desire for life yet. Is that enough for you? Take it as a declaration of love, if you like. And now you go to the right, and I to the left. And it's enough, do you hear? Enough. I mean, even if I don't go away tomorrow, I think I certainly shall go, and we meet again, don't say a word more on these subjects. I beg that particularly. And about Dmitri, too. I ask you specially, never speak to me again, he added, with sudden irritation. It's all exhausted. It has all been said over and over again, hasn't it? And I'll make you one promise in return for it. When at 30, I want to dash the cup to the ground. Wherever I may be, I'll come to have one more talk with you. Even though it were from America, you may be sure of that. I'll come on purpose. It will be very interesting to have a look at you, to see what you'll be by that time. It's rather a solemn promise, you see. And we really may be parting for 7 years or 10. Come, go now to your pater Seraphicus. He is dying. If he dies without you, you will be angry with me for having kept you. Goodbye, kiss me once more. That's right, now go. Ivan turned suddenly and went his way without looking back. It was just as Dmitri had left Alyosha the day before, though the parting had been very different. The strange resemblance flashed like an arrow through Alyosha's mind in the distress and dejection of that moment. He waited a little, looking after his brother. He suddenly noticed that Ivan swayed as he walked, and that his right shoulder looked lower than his left. He had never noticed it before. But all at once he turned too, and almost ran to the monastery. It was nearly dark, and he felt almost frightened. Something new was growing up in him for which he could not account. The wind had risen again, as on the previous evening, and the ancient pines murmured gloomily about him when he entered the hermitage copse. He almost ran. Pater Seraphicus. He got that name from somewhere. Where from? Alyosha wondered. Ivan. Poor Ivan. And when shall I see you again? Here is the hermitage. Yes, that he is. Pater Seraphicus. He will save me. From him and forever. Several times afterwards he wondered how he could, on leaving Ivan, so completely forget his brother Dmitri, though he had that morning, only a few hours before, so firmly resolved to find him and not to give up doing so, even should he be unable to return to the monastery that night.